All right, it's 7:30. Amy, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right, let's call this meeting to order of January 20th of 2022. Can we please have the roll call, Amy?
Yes. Mr. Fuller?
Here.
Mr. DeLomo? Mr. Manel?
Here.
Mr. Van Wagner? Mr. Ashkenazi? Ms. Beal?
Here.
Mr. Mamie?
Here.
Ms. Tallarico?
Here.
Mr. DeGennaro?
Here.
Mr. Puglielli?
Here.
Chairman Worrell?
Here. All right, let's do the salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I have a statement to make from the chairman. The notice of this requirements of the open public meeting law for this meeting have been satisfied. A copy of the notice have been sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Coaster, and filed in the office of the Township of Ocean on July 16th, 2021. Board policy: no new cases will start after 10 p.m. No new testimony will be taken after 10:30 p.m. In addition, the applicant must be limited to 45 minutes of testimony. Please notice that all meetings will be videotaped and audio taped and shown on the Township of Ocean Community Cable Channel 22, Verizon Vios, and Channel 77 on Cablevision. All right, some housekeeping to do. Resolution and memorializations. Do we have to do them individually, Mr. Steinberg?
No, I believe one vote for everybody. They were all voted positively, and whoever's eligible and here tonight, Amy will call.
All right, so I'll let our vice chair person go ahead and read the cases.
Good evening. First, we have Juan Sardo, Block 26.05, Lot 14, 469 West Lincoln Avenue in Oakhurst. Bulk variance approval. Thomas and Arlene Malanga, Block 150.10, Lot 4, 64 Sequoia Parkway, Ocean. Bulk variance approval. Maurice and Gila Benor, Block 25.30, Lot 6, 424 Roosevelt Avenue in Ocean. Bulk variance approval. Christian and Gail Matarazzo, Block 33, Lot 70, 1701 Findern Street, Oakhurst. Bulk variance approval. William Smith, Block 153, Lot 66.04, 8 Dune Road, Ocean. Bulk variance approval.
Okay, thank you.
We need somebody to move those for a positive for the resolution memorialization.
I will move Worrell. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mrs. Beal?
Yes.
Mr. Mamie?
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico?
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro?
Yes.
Chairman Worrell?
Yes. Okay, thank you. We need cases carried. Read next, Vice Chairman.
Cases carried to January 27th, 2022 on Zoom with the link listed below. Seaview Corporate Park LTD, Block 149.01, Lot 1.01, 2603 Route 66 in Ocean.
I believe, Shawanda, for public's information, if they're listening, there is new notice on that application for that date. We're carrying it on the board, but the applicant will notice everybody.
Okay. Can I read the February 17th now?
Yeah, those are going to be carried without notice.
Okay, following cases carried to February 17th, 2022 on Zoom without notice at the following link.
No,
And
not without notice. No new notice.
without new notice.
I guess you're
Okay,
right.
sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
See, Mark, I was about to get us in trouble. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. No problem.
Okay, with the following meeting ID and passcode: Rebecca Weiner, block 131, lot 9, 1309 Wickapeco Avenue in Ocean; Cordoba Ocean LLC, block 205, lot 2 and 3, 1309 Herbert Avenue, 1312 Allenhurst Avenue in Ocean; Carol Doyle, block 122, lot 7, 18 Wanamassa Point Road in Ocean; Sean Realty LLC, block 141, lot 3, Route 66, Asbury Avenue, Ocean; Sorora Land Development, block 22, lot 85 and 85.01, 280 Norwood Avenue in Ocean; Morris Misri, block 26, lot 7, 17 Roslyn Drive in Ocean; Daniel Sroyer, block 46, lot 10, 107 Parker Avenue in Ocean; Janet and Joseph Gindi, block 25.34, lot 3.02, 403 Brookside Avenue in Ocean; Sion Palachi, block 40, lot 30, 504 Roosevelt Avenue in Ocean.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair, for that. Which brings us to our first carried case tonight, case number 1. We have Mr. Daniel Sauer, block 46, lot 10, 107 Parker Avenue, Ocean, zone R2. This is an application to construct an 800 square foot cabana within required rear yard setback exceeding the maximum
No, we have,
building coverage.
Mr. Chairman, that's mine, but that's being carried to next month.
Oh,
The first one is Kenneth Greenstein, block 22, lot 9.
all right. I must
Continue.
have an older agenda in front of me. Okay. Let's go to the next case. Kenneth Greenstein. Block 22, lot 90, 204 West Morgan Avenue, Ocean, in a C1 zone. This is an application to expand the existing single-family home by increasing the building height to 4 stories, increasing the building footprint, constructing an open front porch, and remove the one above ground pool and replace with an in-ground pool, as well as to maintain an existing basketball court. This property is in a flood zone. Okay, Counselor, all yours.
why don't we
Thank you.
find
Before
out
we
from,
begin,
just, yeah, I was gonna do that, Robert. Well, first of all, this application was on January 21st, 2021, so it's been started. Amy,
Okay.
who's eligible?
The 3 new board members listened to the old tapes and certified hearing, so they're eligible. And let's see, I think just not Mr. DeLomo, and he's not here anyway, so.
So we have 8 people here tonight. Only 7 will vote. But they're all eligible.
Yeah, yes, everyone else was there.
how
Great.
about that, Mark?
Pardon me?
Just as a housekeeping matter, there are 2 things that ought to be marked from the last time. Jim Higgins issued a new report of December 8, 2021, which perhaps should be marked as D2 into evidence.
That would be, are we going to enter the packet?
Okay. I don't know if the packet had already been entered on January 21.
Well,
There's
this will be B2, the new packet, though. Is there a new
Okay,
packet,
fine.
Amy? Yeah. There's an updated packet, isn't there, Amy?
The board planner's revised report from December 8th is in the packet, yes.
Right,
And
but so
also
why
in the
don't-
packet, Amy, is the DEP approval of September 23, 21.
Yes, that's also in the packet.
So why don't we mark the
Very
packet B2? Because the first one
Okay.
was B1, will be the board's packet B2, and all of those things are in evidence, and on behalf of the board, we present them, will be of record. Now, Mr. Farber.
Thank you, Mark. And Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, good evening. This is a continuation of an application that was initially heard before you on January 21, 2021. At that time, sworn testimony was taken of the architect and the planner engineer, Mr. Emmanuel and Mr. Lord. And the board heard quite a bit from this. Just to recap, what's unique about this is it's in a flood zone. There are issues because of the zoning. It is a mixed-use area that's commercially zoned, but we're putting a house that's pre-existing and expanding it. We're essentially making a house very, very nice, the nicest house on the street. And I don't think I'm going out on a limb when Mr. Higgins presents. I think we are going to have the nicest house on the block. So the positive criteria are definitely going to outweigh the negative here. As far as the C bulk variance goes, in Mr. Higgins' latest report, it was funny because he used the term convoluted. The house is essentially conforming if it were in a C1 zone. The issue is because we're in an R4 flood zone area. When one of the issues was 4 floors, if you look at the renderings that were previously presented and the evidence, you have a basement that's above a certain level and constitutes a first floor, even though it's a basement. And there was testimony taken that there isn't a lot of standing room in there. It's not going to be a living space area. It's going to be storage and maybe a washer dryer. No bedrooms or anything like that on the first floor. The 4th floor, if you look at the picture, is basically the attic. There is a dormer, but it's basically an attic. And as far as the computation of the height, as outlined by the testimony taken last time, there's a question of even if that's an issue, but under the C1 zone criteria, it's really not. The board members who are new, who listen to the tape, will walk away with a distinct impression that there was some concern about parking spaces and that the basement not be used for living space, which my client will agree to. There are 2 parking spaces on the property, and there is ample parking on the street. And I think that should comport with everybody's recollections. Essentially, this was adjourned so that we could obtain New Jersey Department of Environmental approval, which thank goodness we did approve. And again, it's part of your packet on September 23, 21. A permit was given to do the work by DEP with the changes suggested by my client. At this stage, I think the normal MO for you guys is Mr. Bennett and Mr. Higgins would testify as to their findings. I just might add very, very quickly that my expert, Mr. Lord, has communicated with Mr. Bennett, and I think we're okay on that, but I'll let Mr. Bennett speak for himself. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, Counselor, thank you. Yeah, I want to turn to our professionals next and let them get involved. So Mr. Higgins, you're up.
Yeah, I'm going to be very short. I did do a new report, but quite frankly, that report, the only difference between that report and my report from last January is the dates on the report. The plans are the same. The report is exactly the same, and it's been read into the record already. So unless anybody wants me to take the time to go over it, if some of the new board members want to understand a little bit better about the application, I'll be glad to do it. But it is the same identical report that was read into the record last year. I think really the real issue here is the engineering and the floodplain, and I think Ben is really the one that you need to hear from.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Higgins. Does Mr. Matlack have anything to contribute?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did not prepare a new report for this. There was already an engineering report prepared on January 16th of 2020 by Mr. Fitzgerald. And I have reviewed that report, and I've also spoken with the applicant's engineer regarding the plan, confirmed with him that there are really no changes that were made to the plan with any substance since the January of 2020 report was made. And with regard to the flood hazard area section of the ordinance, a flood hazard area permit was obtained by the applicant, as their attorney reported. And the building is above the flood hazard elevation. It's in compliance with the flood hazard regs. They have a permit again for the addition to the building as well as the pool in the back. Those permits do come with conditions from the NJDEP, and that's the applicant's responsibility to comply with those conditions. The board doesn't really get involved with those conditions. And regarding the ordinance, the applicant does comply with the ordinance requirement of smart vent or vents in the building foundation. There is a detail on the plans, and that's in there. So I really don't have any other comments on that.
Okay, thank you. Counselor, you have another, you said someone wants to testify on your team?
I don't know that any more testimony is necessary because my notes reflect that the board was rather positive towards this application. I don't mean to characterize what the board was doing, but the issue had been essentially, we're good with it, shelve it pending DEP approval. We have the DEP approval, and I don't want to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, as they say. So I'm comfortable with the application and the record is presented previously and tonight. If the board just wants Mr. Lord to refresh the recollections, I think Mr. Higgins' report, I really like it. It's essentially positive, but really you're left with this, and this is more argument than evidence. So Mark, if you want me to save this for a conclusion, I can. But essentially, we're taking an existing home, making it really nice, very, very attractive on a commercial street that essentially will become the nicest house on the block. It's going to increase everybody's values because it's going to be the nicest house. It's going to have a much nicer backyard for my client. He is going to meet the positive criteria of just beautifying the block versus a negative. And the concern the board had was the basement not be living space, and it won't be, and it essentially can't be because of the height of the basement. Washer, dryer, some storage, it's not going to be living space. And, we would ask that the board view this application favorably as such. Again, if any board member has any question or would like my clients, strike that, our witnesses, Mr. Lord, Mr. Emanuel, to comment some more, fine, but in your packet are the renderings, and the testimony from before was presented.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Does any board members have questions? Nobody has a question, okay. Does anyone from the public have any questions? All right, none of the questions from the public. I need someone to make a motion to close the public portion.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All right, so Mr. Steinberg, what are we looking at here? Go ahead.
Let's get Amy to call the roll on the closing of the public hearing.
Okay, Amy, sorry, forgot.
That's okay. Mr.
That's
Fuller,
what you pay me for. It's okay.
Yes.
Mr. Manel. Mr. Manel.
Yes.
Great. Ms. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Where's Mr. Manel?
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Chairman Morrell.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Steinberg, would you like to?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let's see, how do we want to handle this?
Yes.
Help me out, Jim. We need
the
D.
variance, a D variance, or D2 variance for expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use.
And then we need the books.
Right, because the ordinance does tie any use into the most to the zone where it best fits, those uses in the zone where it
Right,
best
and-
fits. There are a number of
and-
bulk variances. I don't think we need
and-
site plan because there is no site plan.
Right, so,
Use and bulks.
and I'll give you the bulks, because I do have those here. Just give me a second. And the bulks are here. So what the board needs to do is first vote on whether or not they're going to permit, under the criteria of a D2, the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use. We do vote it separately for the new members, only because a D2 variance requires 5 affirmative votes out of 7. If it's 4-3, it fails. Okay. And then if that passes, then we would in bulk, basically, approve all the bulk variances in this case, which are the following. Well, actually, they need a lot of D variances, so we'll vote all the D variances together. The use is in a district restricted against the use. It's a non-permitted use, but it's pre-existing. Expansion of a pre-existing use. Any conditions for this D3, you're telling me it requires also, Jim?
No, there's no D3.
That's what you have on your report. Sorry.
No, I listed for the new board members, I listed each type of D variance. And then as you get down below, it's only the D2 variance that's necessary.
Okay, variance to expand a pre-existing.
I was trying to
Okay.
give a little bit of education.
Okay, so what we're voting on, the first vote would be, somebody would make a motion to permit an expansion of pre-existing non-conforming use. This was a house in a commercial zone, basically, and we're expanding it. It's not permitted in a commercial zone, but it's there, and they seek to expand it. That would be vote number 1. Vote number 2 would be bulk variances to construct in a floodplain, which is now taken care of by NJDEP approval and conditions. The front yard setback, which is not much different than it is now. Side yard setbacks, building coverage. It's a substantial amount of building coverage, 53.94%. However, since we don't count the impervious,
The floodplain.
sorry, we don't count the questionable areas where we have sensitive areas as part of the lot. For purposes of calculating the percentages, it is high because a lot of the land is not usable for calculating that percentage. Maximum stories, this turns out to be under the type of ordinance, we have a 4-story building and accessories and some of the accessory structures, which are not exactly in the backyard. So that's basically, and the height of the fence, we're keeping the fence at that height, I guess, because it's needed in the rear, okay? And it's behind the front of the residence. So we're voting A for a D2 variance and B for all of the bulk variances that go with it. So somebody needs to be a motion for the
Move the
D2.
D2 variance.
Second.
Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
yes,
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
The next variance, the next vote would be for all the bulk variances, and they will contain the same condition that there be no living space in the basement. It solely be used for washer, dryer, or storage.
I'll move the bulk variances with the conditions Mark just outlined.
I need a second.
I'll second. Second.
Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
yes,
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Mark, I think for each of those votes, we had 8 people voting.
Oh, I
So
wasn't,
the,
who?
I guess
So,
the lowest ranking,
yeah, I didn't hear the 8. Yeah,
Yeah, I was
Amy-
counting on this last vote. I thought the first one there was 8. I was counting on the last one. There was 8.
okay, Amy,
Yeah,
disregard the
last
vote of the
alternate.
lowest member on the totem pole.
Yeah.
I guess that's a third alternate, is the lowest member that we have, or a fourth?
Fourth.
Anthony's a fourth. So Anthony, on this one, you didn't vote, or your vote doesn't count. We'll have to talk to Congress about that, but
Well,
the record will only show that the first 7 who voted on the application will be on the resolution. Good pick it up,
Everybody,
Jay. Thank you.
very, very much. Have a good evening, and I'm delighted to cede the floor to Jennifer Krimko. Good night, everybody. Happy
Thank
New
you,
Year.
Counselor.
See you next month.
Okay. So I have on the docket next case, Brielle Avenue LLC. Is that correct?
That's correct. Good evening, Mr. Worrell. How are
Good
you?
evening. Good evening. Block 184, lot 1 and 4, 1304-06 Brielle Avenue, Ocean. The zone is in I1. This is an application to construct an addition to the existing warehouse building, construction a new building with variances, minor subdivision, and a land swap with the township. We do have, I think this case has been heard before, correct, Mr. Steinberg?
It was,
Yes.
Yes.
it was Mr. Worrell, and I understand from Amy that Mr. Manel and Mr. Fuller were not here at the last meeting, but they did sign certifications that they listened and they are now eligible. I don't think you have any new board reports, but I'd like to move those in, I guess, as B2, those certifications.
Okay.
Sure.
Amy, can we do that?
Yes.
Okay. Counselor, do you want to make a statement, or do you want me to go to my experts first?
Well, your experts didn't issue new reports, so if I
Okay.
could, I'd like to just give a little bit of an opening, remind everybody where we were, move a couple new things into evidence, and then get going. So as the board may, and I'm sorry for jumping in, Jennifer Krimko from Ansel Griminarin on behalf of the applicant. As the board may remember, at the December meeting, we started the hearing with regard to the testimony of an addition on the existing warehouse building and the construction of new freestanding building to be used as a car club. You heard the testimony of our site engineer and the testimony of our architect, and we went through all of the comments in both Ben's and Jim's review letter. At the end of the meeting, there was still some questions. My client has not yet testified, which he will today, but at the end of the meeting, there were some questions with regard to what exactly is a car club and where can they see other ones. So I submitted to the board, and I just want to move them into evidence because I know from Amy that they were handed out to the board members, so I want them to be part of the record. As A11, a sample of existing car clubs, and I gave a list of 5 websites, and those were circulated to the board in advance. So A11 will be the website list.
Okay.
And then, just bear with me. And then A12, it's a 2-page pamphlet, and I have it to show on the screen as my client testifies. And it is basically a promotional pamphlet for this car club, should the board approve it. And it's just a prototypical one to kind of give an idea as to what it's about. So that's A12. That's 2 pages, and I submitted that as well. So having concluded with the engineer and the architect, I'm going to introduce you to my client, who's a principal of the entity who is developing the car club. We have our traffic engineer here, and then finally our professional planner. But before I introduce you to Brian, I just want to, if I can share my screen, Amy.
Ron, you're
Yeah,
actually the host because I had to log off earlier. I had audio issues. So can you give Jennifer the ability to share her screen?
This is just. Okay.
Just make her a co-host.
Hold on a second here.
I can't do it.
You click on the 3 dots up by my face on the upper right corner and right click it. and click make host or make co-host. There you go.
It is done.
Yep. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, so just to remind everybody, this is at the corner of Brielle Avenue and Rose Avenue, which turns into Valley Road. This light tan is the existing building, and we're proposing the addition to that, which would be just the general flex warehouse for permitted uses, and then the car club in this location here. And if you remember, there was a minor subdivision to swap land with the township for the water tower property next door, to square off our property and to put their road entirely on their property. And then, bear with me, I'm sorry. And then just by way of architecturals, if you remember, this is the proposed structure, and this was moved in at the last meeting. And this is just to show the beauty of the building that we are proposing. So with that, by way of recollection, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, have Brian Gold sworn, introduce you to him, and have him explain a little bit about in greater detail what a car club is, what they intend to do, and how it's going to operate.
Okay, Mr. Gold, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to the board. I just need you to raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Brian, just state your name for the record.
Brian Gold.
Okay, and Brian, you're a principal in Brielle Avenue LLC, the entity that is making the application this evening?
Yes.
Okay, and you are involved and will be part of the day-to-day operations of the proposed Shore Car Club?
Yes.
Okay, so having heard the testimony that was, and if you don't mind, I'm going to put up the flyer. I think that might be helpful for everybody to go through. Why don't you just, in your own words, before we go through the flyer, explain to the board what the vision is, where the ideas came from, and how it's different or similar to some of the car club websites that we shared with the board.
Sure. Essentially, a lot of the similar business models have been popping up around the country. We felt that there was a need in our area to do the same. And it really breaks down to allowing members to store their toys / investments with us, and also having a social aspect in a separate area of the building where we can meet and have events around the car hobby and things aligned with the car hobby.
Okay, when you say store, so essentially the first floor is essentially a very large warehouse, and the only thing being warehouse there would be vehicles.
Yes.
Okay, and as a car club, aside from having a safe climate controlled location to have your vehicles, the car club will also offer services to its members. So you want to talk a little bit about what kind of services they would do?
Sure. First, the first service is just offering a very secure building with monitoring of all sorts, making sure that only members can get in and have access to their cars. We're going to make sure that all the cars are in good standing with their papers, inspections, fluids. Nothing will be serviced on the property. Everything will be a concierge service to be taken out of the building at other local businesses for like oil changes and things of that nature.
So for example, if I had a luxury car that I kept there and I knew it was due for an oil change, I could call the car club and say, could you please arrange with my dealer to have it taken over there to have it serviced? And the car club would do that for me for a fee.
Correct.
Okay. And as far as detailing of the car, there is a wash bay, and that's just for the car club members to wash their vehicles, but it's not for full detailing or any kind of commercial operation there.
Correct. It's an amenity for the members.
Okay. And let me just, you provided these photos that I have up on the screen now. Are these basically sample photos of what you hope the interior will look like when constructed, as far as the level of finishes and the layout and things of that nature.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and what I'm showing on top is the lounge area for members to congregate. And as you can see in the bottom photo, as was testified to by your architect, there's a glass wall that basically overlooks the cars for the people to view.
That's correct.
Okay, let me just shut this down for a second. As far as, oh, I'm sorry, there was testimony that the car club will have 2 employees, is that correct?
Yes.
2 employees on site?
Like a floor manager and basically someone upstairs and someone downstairs.
Okay, and exclusive of events, members could come access their cars Monday to Saturday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or Sunday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Otherwise, they would have to make other alternative arrangements to access the vehicles.
Correct.
Okay, and that's with the exception of the garage doors exception with the bays that have garage doors to the exterior.
Correct. We have a number of exterior facing garage doors that will be a separate tier of storage that those members can access their car when they want.
Okay, and there was testimony that there would be no large car carriers here. If the board were to condition it on that, that's something that you could agree to?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I went over all the operations. Okay, and you understand that that the parking that's being proposed here, we don't need a parking variance, and we meet the parking requirement, but that's based on any of the tenants in the new portion of the warehouse building, not the car club, the addition, would be fall within the permitted uses. And if a different use wanted to go in there and it didn't meet the parking ratio, you'd have to return to the board for a parking variance?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, I felt like the websites could define the use better than anything, because I think that we described it through the engineer, we described it through the architect, and I gave you the sample websites. I know that Brian is an expert on this now, so I don't know if there's any questions that the board members have to further understand what a car club is.
Do any board members have a question for Mr. Cole?
I
Ms.
do.
Talarico, go ahead.
I have a few questions. A lot you answered already, but so one of my questions is, if the alarm went off, who would be responding to the car club? Would it be Ocean Township Police or private security?
Just like any other monitoring company that you do on a private commercial building, it would be local authorities.
And in other car clubs, how often has the security gone off, or, how often are we calling the police on that? Just wanting to know so that we're not burdening the police. Because I've
Sure.
seen that locally, there have been some car thefts. Of course, they're not in car clubs, but high-end cars have been stolen. One was in Red Bank recently. So I'm just asking for my own knowledge on that.
It's going to be essentially impossible to get inside the building. And as far as other businesses, they rely heavily on that, having a reputation of having low to none incidences. So, that's basically what I can say about that.
Okay,
And you're
and the
also-
cameras.
I was just going to ask, you're going to have video cameras and it's going to be monitored by a central monitoring system, and it's going to be state-of-the-art security.
Correct.
So inside and outside, 360?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. My other question is, it says Cars and Coffee benefiting a local charity. What charity is that?
It depends on, maybe some members are involved in charity. I myself, I'm on the Family and Children's Services Board, so we look forward to doing some things with them.
Okay, so it's different ones.
All different ones.
Okay, it hasn't been determined yet.
No.
And I had one other question. How many local, just the 2, is there any other local jobs that will be created from your car club, or just those 2?
It's gonna just only be a few jobs at the facility.
And there's going to be just employees there from 8 to 6 and 9 to 4. That's it.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Unless there's a, for example, a charity event or something like that, but those are that's when the full-time employees would be there.
Brian, I have a question though, is when you have special events like your charity events, any kind of social events, do you bring catering in?
Yes,
You do, so you'll use local businesses for catering, that type of thing.
that is correct.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions as well. Mr. Gold, can you talk about what the events entail, maybe how frequently they happen? It looks like there's talk about member events plus additional private events. And, you know, is there like a maximum number of people that attend these events?
Sure. Yeah, we're gonna offer probably a couple events a month for the members. Those will be typically smaller events. Whoever signs up, it'll be an RSVP type of thing. And that'll be around, like I said, the car hobby, things aligned with the car hobby and other collecting, maybe some local collectors speaking. And then the private events, I believe our architect testified to the capacity, but that'll be probably smaller private events like birthdays, other gatherings.
And Ben, our traffic engineer, because we took a look at that based on the parking, when he gets up, he'll talk about what the limitation would be for those for those bigger events.
Okay,
He has that number.
thank you.
And he'll also talk about the fact that the events, the larger events would be when the warehouse and the other uses are not open. So we'd have the full use of all of the parking lot.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Ballock, you done?
Yes, that
Okay.
was the extent of my questions.
Any other board members have a question for Mr. Gold?
I just have one item of clarification, maybe for Jennifer. The condition is no large car carriers. So that for a vehicle to be dropped off to pick up, it'll be on a flatbed, basically single.
Correct. That was the testimony from the engineer. It would be a single or a double flatbed.
Single or double. Okay, only single or double flatbeds. Thank you.
Mr. Fuller, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one, Brian. When the weather gets nice out, are you anticipating any events outside? Have you set up spaces for outdoor stuff?
We maybe some small gatherings for like an open house event. So people who aren't members who might want to sign up can come and park outside and while the weather's nice, we'll have the doors open and they can come, check out the facility. Otherwise, I don't see anything else being held outside. The whole point is to really create a space inside that's really nice and so everyone can be comfortable.
Thank you.
Okay. Counselor, do you have another expert, the traffic, or you said?
Yes, I do, Mr. Worrell. I just, in case you wanted to open Mr. Gold up to the public real quick, so we can.
Okay, sure.
dispose
Does
of
anyone
it.
from the public have a question for Mr. Gold? If not, I need a motion to close the public.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We're just going to the next witness.
Okay, great. I'd like to introduce John McCormack. He is a licensed professional engineer, and I'm introducing him as an expert in the field of traffic engineering.
Good evening, everyone.
Mr. McCormick, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have you've been before us before, correct?
You know, if I have, it was years ago. I don't recall exactly the application, but I've been all over if I haven't been in Ocean.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll accept your credentials. Go ahead.
Jen, would you like me to put just a little on?
Having used you as an expert in multiple municipalities, you're a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey, and you've been accepted as such in front of multiple boards in New Jersey?
Absolutely have, yes.
Thank you, sir.
With an expertise in traffic, right?
Correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and just very briefly, John, you took a look at the existing building and the uses there, the proposed addition and how that's being laid out, and then the car club, and you did some analysis with regard to what the parking required would be. So what did you find?
Yeah, Jen, do you want to just put the, one of the graphics up, whether it's the site plan rendered or the,
Sure.
anything up, just so.
Yep.
Okay. And it's funny, it is pretty cool that a traffic engineer finally gets to work on a car club or something, automotive related. So this was a fun one for us. But in the interest of time and being brief, I don't want to rehash what the site engineer or the architect went through. You can see the site plan, you see the driveways, the parking lot layout, etc. I'll talk about two things unless you have questions for me otherwise. The two things being trip generation, meaning the traffic to be generated during the peak periods on and off the site. And the other, as Jen mentioned, the parking. I'll start quickly with the trip generation. As you can tell by some of the testimony that's been given to date, this is somewhat of a unique use. We had to utilize a combination of methodologies in order to piece together what we think the trip generation is going to be for this site. For the warehouse, we utilized a very common ITE, which I'm sure as your board has heard before, Institute of Transportation Engineers. And then for the car club, we used a combination of information like you did just hear from Brian, as well as NJDOT has some land uses, banquet facility type things that we utilize to model out the event space.
And what did you find, John? Did you find that?
Yeah, basically, the trip generation anticipated is very low. The warehouse expansion is about one trip every couple of minutes, in addition to the existing site. And then the car club, as we understand, is off-hour operations. As Mr. Gold mentioned, it's nights, it's weekends. It's only 2 employees per day. Members, we're anticipating about 10 or so, maybe in a day, spread out over the whole day. Remember, there's only about 60 some odd cars being stored there. So, the membership attendance is going to be lighter on the lighter end during the day. And then the lounge, I think we've already agreed to a 120 person limit for the lounge space. So when you factor that through and you figure that people come 2 per car typically, and it's spread out over the 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Evening hours, it's really a very light trip generator. Reminder that obviously this is a more industrial area, right? So the majority of our tenants on site, the warehouses, both existing and proposed, will be closed while we have our events. The majority of the surrounding uses are warehouse type light industrial. They are most likely going to be closed. So this is really a good staggering of the activity on the site, meaning we use the lounge when the warehouses are closed. And it's a real good example of complementary uses that basically result in minimal traffic.
So I think the answer to the question, Ben, is that we don't expect events to have more than 120 people based on the size of the lounge and the size of the kitchen and everything else.
That's right. And let me touch on the parking, Jen, if you
Sure.
will. Simply stated, we satisfy the ordinance requirement. Similar to the trip generation, right? We talked about activity times are not going to overlap with the warehouse uses predominantly. This is a great example of shared parking. You've probably heard other traffic engineers talk about shared parking, where it's complementary uses. They share the same parking on the site. So, we are confident that there is more than enough parking on this property to accommodate.
Right, but John, we meet the requirements without the shared parking. So the shared parking doesn't even need to come into effect. So we meet the parking requirements, and you're confident that the site is not going to generate a lot of traffic, or at least any more traffic than a permitted use would back there. And the ingress and egress is safe, and you looked at all the circulation and you're comfortable with the site layout.
Absolutely correct.
Great. Any questions, Mr. Worrell?
Do the board members have any questions for this expert?
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. McCormick, can you talk about real quick, your trip generation says at your peak hours, you have, it looks like 10 trips in and out for the car club members. Can you explain how you got to that number?
Well, in speaking with Brian and just thinking about how this facility will operate, we anticipated that maybe there'll be about 10 members on a given day. that come to the facility. What we did in order to be ultra conservative is we basically assumed that all 10 of those members are going to come in 1 hour. And then all 10 of those members are going to take a car out in the same hour. So we have a conservative estimate in the report that we prepared as far as what we anticipate from a membership, attendance at the facility.
Okay, so even though there are, I think I heard 60 members, only 10 approximately would be coming in during the peak hours.
60 members, I was alluding to the fact that there's 60 car parking spaces.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I could just, Ben, if I could just jump in for a second, just to clarify. When you're talking about that 10, you're talking about 10 members coming and getting their cars and taking the cars out.
Okay.
Sure.
Meaning if 60 cars are housed there, all 60 people are not going to come every day and take their cars.
Right.
So this is that we expect conservatively 10 people to get their car every day. And when you did your trip estimate, you assume they all came exactly at the same time.
That's right. To be conservative, we put them all in 1 hour, which we know is not going to happen.
Okay.
Do you have to have a car there to be a member?
No, you don't. That was, I believe there was testimony at the last one. No, if you're a car enthusiast and you want to be a member of the club and be able to come to the events, certainly there'll be a structure. There'd be a structure for that as well.
John, now most events are going to occur in actually off hours from the use of the rest of the facility. About how many spaces do you think will be available for those events, parking spaces?
Wow. Well, we have 211 on site.
Okay.
Right. So let's assume there's about 180 in the back area surrounding the car club. It's between 6 and 10 p.m. I can't imagine more than a dozen or so warehouse folks working a touch late. But as you see, when you go out there, these industrial uses are kind of like clockwork.
Yeah. So what you're saying is basically there's going to be over 100 spaces available.
However,
And the only reason I'm bringing that up is I actually went today to visit one of the sites that Ms. Krimko listed as a car club. It's the Auto Vault, New Jersey in Morganville. And it's in a very similar area to this in terms of the uses surrounding it. And it only has about 40 spaces associated with it. So, based on looking at that, now obviously you don't know the exact operation or whether it's exactly the same as this is being proposed, but clearly the parking I think is going to be more than adequate.
absolutely right. We satisfy the ordinance, and as I mentioned, these are uses that are very complementary. So I think we're very conservative in the fact that we have so much parking supply.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. McCormick?
No board members have a question? If not, anyone from the public have a question for this expert? Okay, no questions. Council, you have another expert? You said a planner?
I do. I have my final expert, also named John, also starting with MC, but it's John McDonough. So if I could have him sworn in.
Good evening, Mr. McDonough. Okay, do you please, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And have you testified before this board before?
I have.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. And just to point it out for the record, I previously moved in Mr. McDonough's packet as A10. I'm going to call it up on the screen as he testifies. It was moved in at the last meeting. And John, knowing no one's better than you at what you do, I'm going to turn it over to you and have you walk the board through the planning reasons and just tell me when to turn the page.
Okay. So this is a very straightforward application. This is going to be a retrofit of a site that is presently developed with a warehouse industrial use. We've got good context here in terms of that open lawn area, parking capacity.
John, can you come closer to your computer? You're going in and out volume wise.
What I can do too, I can also grab headphones. Would that be better?
Yeah, just as you were just going in and out a little bit, at least for me.
Okay. All right, so again, we're looking at a site that is, I'll say partially developed now. This is going to be a retrofit of that site. We think there's a good blend, a good marriage with what the applicant is proposing here with the capacity and the carrying capacity of the site. 2 tax lots, block 184, lot 1.01, and a portion of block 188, lot 1.01. You heard about the 6.38 acres. Developed with that multi-tenant warehouse building, 32,758 square feet and change. And then the parking area and the town portion, that little wing there is mostly vacant. You've heard about the plan to construct a 23,388 square foot addition to the warehouse, plus a new 39,443 square foot, beautiful building, 2-story car club building. That is going to have storage of these members' high-end vehicles, plus a lounge, primarily for the club members. It also includes, as part of the application, a re-subdivision, or what we call a lot line adjustment, to square off those lots. And it's basically going to be a land swap with the municipal lot and the subject. In terms of the zone here, pretty straightforward, again, in terms of the relief that the applicant is seeking. The primary relief from the I-1 light industrial district is to have a D1 use variance to allow a car club, which I think we all can agree is somewhat of a novel use, not addressed anywhere in the code and not really something that we see in common practice in most municipalities. We've also got some subsidiary C relief here, which was actually addressed in detail by our engineer. I won't go through them one by one. I'll just tie them back to the statute for the board. And reminding the board here that the zone we're in is very permissive. It does allow for a wide variety of uses, manufacturing, warehousing. We got a boatyard, private recreational facilities could go here. So the degree of departure from the zone scheme, not overly substantial. And of course, you've got those accessory uses as well, which are akin to what would be proposed here by the applicant. Snack bars, restaurants, cafeterias are also permitted as accessory to a permitted principal use. Again, all of the higher tiers of zoning control from a bulk standpoint are being substantially met. The coverage, the setbacks, the floor area, the height, and of course the parking are all met. Applicant is not asking the board to move on any relief in that regard. So we'll take the board back to the primary relief, that being the D1 use variance and the 4 elements of proof that the Medici test requires. Part number 1, all land use planning starts with the land. So we look at the particular characteristics of the land and whether this land use marries up with the particular land. The site is particularly suitable based on all the testimony on the record, and also this visual that you see here. Surrounding uses are predominantly industrial and vacant wooded town land. Condition-wise, the site is substantially oversized with excellent carrying capacity to accommodate the use that's here. Second part of the test moves us from the land and moves us to the land use law and those reasons why we have the authority to zone in the first place. Purposes of zoning that advance here include Purpose A, Purpose C, Purpose G, Purpose I, and Purpose M. And we'll find that the project will promote the general welfare with these enhancements to an established industrial site. The project will also promote positive aesthetics with a fresh new street presence. It's going to be a very beautiful building right there on the street that will certainly add value and quality to the site, to the corridor, and to the area at large. And then obviously, infill development will promote efficient land use and variety of land uses in appropriate locations. Again, that goes towards those purposes of zoning that I just laid out for the board. Third part of the test moves us from the land, from the site, looks at the surrounding land use context and whether there will be any substantially adverse impacts or effects on the surrounding neighborhood. Based on all the testimony on the record, functionally, this site will function safely and efficiently based on sworn expert testimony before me. Visually, the project will improve the roadside appearance of the site with this showpiece building. Operationally, this is a very low intensity use, mostly storage with that stipulated cap that you heard with respect to the events. And the use is compatible with this established pattern of the neighborhood, the non-residential area. finally, the last part of the Medici test focuses on not the land, not the neighborhood, but on the vision for the area, not the established pattern, but what's contemplated here. And in terms of the Medici reconciliation, although the use is not expressly prohibited, its omission is likely not deliberative because it is such a unique land use. The use is akin to many permitted uses in the zone, basically storage and lounging with eating areas for the occupants. And based on the degree of departure not being substantial from the zone plan, we also see this as not being tantamount to a rezone. A novel land use, and unlike Medici, this is not a case where multiple variances for the same land use have been granted over and over again. So there's a clear distinction from Medici. And then finally, sustainability of a strong industrial base is a recurring theme in the 1990 master plan and all of those re-exams that came thereafter through 2014. With that said, the primary relief based on all the testimony on the record is clearly met here in terms of the statutory test. The lower level relief, the C relief, the design exceptions all meet those lower standards. The C is justified under the flexible C balancing test, whereby the benefits of the application as a whole would substantially outweigh the detriments. And those design exceptions, which our engineer went through one by one, all meet that standard of reasonableness and appropriateness and impracticability, which is a way of saying serves no practical planning purpose if strict or literal enforcement of the ordinance is applied here. All said, again, based on all the testimony on the record, this is a very good application for the site and for the community at large. The statutory criteria for relief are met and approval is warranted.
Thank you, John. Mr. Worrell, are there any planning questions for John McDonough?
Anyone from the board have a question for this expert? If not, is there anyone from the public has a question for this expert? All right.
That's all I have, Mr. Worrell.
I just one question. Do you think that the land swap was also a benefit to the township
Well,
as part of this application?
It's a benefit to the township only to the extent that right now their road is trespassing on our property. So it allows their access road to be wholly on their property.
So it is a benefit to clean up the situation.
Yes, it's a better platting of land, more regular lots.
So, Mr. Worrell, I would ask if we could just open for public comment, and then I'm going to make probably the briefest closing I've ever made.
Okay, does anyone from the public have a question?
No comment, Mr. Worrell.
Anybody have a comment? All right, I need a motion to close the public portion of the hearing.
Move that we close public.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Amy, the roll call, please.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Ms. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
and Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Steinberg, what are we looking for here?
Well, I think that Ms. Krimko wanted to sum up.
Oh, you want to do your summation?
Well, what I was going to do to just make it easy, I was going to do a quick sum up and I was going to list the variance relief.
Okay.
And because I have my notice right in front of me. So as you heard from all the testimony of the past evenings, this is a very unique and very suitable use for this particular piece of property. It's going to quote Mr. Farber from the last application, be the most beautiful building on the block, for sure. We can all agree to that. We are asking for a minor subdivision for the swap. We're asking for a use variance for non-permitted use. We're asking for site plan approval, and we're asking for some bulk variance relief as it related. The bulk variance relief is for existing and proposed lot depth on the two lots. And as you heard from the testimony, that's just a function of where it's measured. Rear yard setback to the car club building of 54 feet, 54.3, where 60 is required. And if you recall, that's up against the wooded hill. parking stalls backing into an entrance drive from Brielle Avenue of 8.9 feet where 25 feet is required. Parking in a front yard where parking is limited to visitors only. Curbed islands less than 10 feet proposed, whereas a minimum of 10 feet is required. And as you remember, the testimony was that was all interior to the site and that there was adequate planting elsewhere on the site to make up for that. No loading spaces provided for the car club because none are needed in that it is not a warehouse, it is a unique use. 4 curb cuts where 2 are permitted. This was a variance that this board previously granted twice, and there was testimony that if this lot was subdivided, there could be up to 6 curb cuts. The width of the curb cut, it was determined, was not a variance, I think, because it was measured at the property line as opposed to what the radius where it meets the road. Design waivers as landscape area. There was the variance for the fence wall height, which was on the rear and the side, and the height of the wall, if the board remembers, was facing into the site as opposed to having an impact on the neighbors. Parking stall width of 9 feet wide instead of 10. And then finally, 3 freestanding signs where 2 are permitted. And the board may remember, they were very tasteful and architecturally done monument signs, and it was only for the purpose of identifying each building location. So I think that that summarized it, Mark, unless I
What about
missed.
a 2 feet change in grade? You still have that?
Yes, I'm sorry, the
I got
change of grade of 2 feet or more.
Right, and that's because of the terrain and the way that
Correct.
the situation is, yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, there was all the testimony for that. So that's the approval that we're seeking and the relief that we're seeking, Mr. Worrell.
Okay. I
But you-
need, go ahead.
Now you need me. Now you
Yeah.
need the first vote would, okay, again, the first vote is a D variance. This is a D1, which is to permit a use that is not specifically enumerated in our ordinance as a permitted use. And that would be for the car club and for the reasons set forth by both Mr. Higgins, who seems to feel that this is a reasonable use for the site, and of course for the expert presented by the applicant, the applicant's professional planner. So the board would, and again, we need 5 affirmative votes. Only call 7, Amy, okay? And somebody needs to move the D1 variance.
I'll move that D1 variance.
Get second.
Thank you.
Amy?
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Ms. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenero,
Yes.
and Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
That's 7. Okay. So that passes. The next vote would be for all of the bulk variances that are set forth in Jim's report and in your packets, and just set forth on the record by Mr. Krimko as combined.
Make that motion.
I need
No,
a
I can
second.
second. I'll second it.
Thank you. Amy, call roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenero,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Yeah, and Jennifer, if you have no objection, I think we did this the same way on the Hillel School. Both the minor subdivision and the site plan can be combined in one
Yeah.
resolution.
No problem. Some boards do all of it in one resolution, so that's
Well,
fine.
it just makes it a little easier, I think, to set forth the different reasons, because there's different reasons to give a D variance than there is to give, a parking space variance. So, but we would do the minors, the next variance and last variance resolution would be for the site plan approval, subject to the one condition, which is that there be no car carriers to the site. And with the site plan, we would also grant the waivers, which are tree location and number of trees.
No,
Now,
we actually,
Go ahead. Did you?
we actually did that. We're not seeking a waiver for that.
Well, there's 2 of them. It's tree location and preservation plan. Are you going to present a full plan?
I believe that we did, if I'm not mistaken. We submitted that as part of our last go-round.
Because Jim's report says that's still open, but if you said you submitted it, it could, all right.
I think
The
that
number
was
of
not
trees,
complete at the last meeting. I just listened to
Pardon
it
me?
today.
I would,
You had to still deliver like the other half of it or something like that.
Right. So we had to do more. So I guess what I'm saying is though, we didn't ask for a waiver for that because it's my understanding that the board doesn't grant waivers for that. So we're going to comply with the tree ordinance.
both the tree location and preservation plan you submit and the number of trees and or pay the township the differential,
Correct.
yes.
so that there are no design waivers with this. So the design waivers are being eliminated. Jennifer?
Mark, I don't remember off the top of my head, but to the extent that there are any design waivers that were testified to, we would ask for them as part of the site plan.
The only two that are in Jim's report are for the tree location and preservation plan, which you said you're going to supply, and meet your tree obligation by either planting or monetarily.
Yes,
Of course,
so
we
we are
have-
not seeking for those, but again, design, landscape islands and things like that sometimes fall under design waivers. So I just don't want to mince words and make a misrepresentation on the record. That's all.
Landscape islands are variances.
Okay,
And we've granted them,
Yes.
okay,
and they're being granted. So it's basically the tree location preservation, which you're going to finish, and then you'll figure out how many trees you have to plant. If you can't plant them, you have to pay the difference to the fund.
correct.
Yeah, okay. So we would be granting site plan approval without waivers of the tree location preservation and the number of trees. And with the condition that there be no large car carriers to the site and that all vehicles be transported by single or double flatbeds. And the subdivision as proposed for the land swap. Minor subdivision. So that would be the last vote, the site plan and the
Make
minor
that motion.
subdivision.
I need a second.
A second.
Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
yes,
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Have a great night.
All right. Our next carried case is 3500 Sunset Avenue LLC. Block 43, lots 1 and 2, 3500 Sunset Avenue, Ocean, and a zone R2. This is an application for a minor subdivision to subdivide lot 3, combine a partition of a newly subdivided lot within lot 4 to form lot 4.01. Also for preliminary and final site plan approvals, to construct a 50,104 square foot warehouse, as well as seeking conditional use variances, associated bulk variances. And we have our attorney tonight here, Mr. Alfieri.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair. Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We were here in October of last year and presented testimony from Mr. Bosch. There were some technical issues that the board felt we should address with the board professionals. We have since done that. Before I conclude my summary and introduce Mr. Bosch again, I wanted to make sure that the newer members or the members that weren't at the October meeting have listened to the tapes, that we do have a full complement of board members. Amy, is that true? Or Ron?
You do have
Full compliment.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Everyone has certified that they have listened to the 10 who weren't there that night. I forgot the October, I don't recall the date.
Thank you.
They're here and they've signed affidavits to that effect, and they will be marked as, do we have a new packet for tonight? It's the same packet, Amy.
We do not have a new packet.
Okay, so then the certifications or affidavits that they signed that making them eligible will be marked as B2. So we'll have board's exhibit in the files. Okay, Amy?
Thank you. So since the last meeting, we met with Mr. Matlock and Mr. Higgins, and I know Mr. Bosch also had separate discussions with them. Mr. Bosch submitted a letter to the board dated December 3rd, which he'll testify to momentarily. We also submitted revised architectural plans that Mr. Montfort will testify to when he comes up. We also, this is a split zoned property, so we submitted a letter amending the application to include those uses in the light industrial zone as part of our request. And then the last thing we did is we did renotice for the December hearing, but we did not get reached at that hearing because there wasn't a full complement of board members, and we were carried to this evening without the need for further notice. I'd like to now have Mr. Bosch come back onto the screen. He was qualified and did testify at the last hearing. Dave?
I'm here.
Okay, thanks. Would you summarize for the board, for those members who weren't here, generally what this application is about, and then what's happened since that last hearing?
Okay, first, Ron, would it be possible for have me to share screen?
Everybody wants a shared screen. Let's see what we got here. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, can we see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what I have brought up before you is the rendering that we had prepared for the prior meetings, just to briefly overview what was attested to previously. Again, the properties are lots 3 and 4 in block 43. To orient you, Roller Road is to the west or south. Sunset Avenue is to the north, and the property involves roughly 10 acres, including an existing industrial grade structure located on existing lot 3, and lot 4 is vacant. Part of the application includes a minor subdivision by which we're asking to subdivide off approximately 160 feet by 280 feet off of lot 3 and join it into lot 4 to provide for a more regular property line boundary, allowing for a more efficient use of the property. We are proposing on this currently vacant property to construct two buildings, one of 16,500 square feet, the other of 33,604 square feet, designed for warehouse uses. We did allocate approximately 20% or 10,000 square feet of the building areas to be used as office spaces in support of those warehouse uses. Parking at the appropriate rates, a total of 91 parking spaces are provided. Access is provided both from Roller Road and from Bloomsbury Avenue. The two issues that had not been resolved at the last public hearing were with regard to the tree location and preservation plan and the stormwater management aspects of the site plan. With regard to the tree preservation and management plan, I met with Mr. Higgins at the property, and we came up with a formula, shall we say, for establishing the proper counting of the existing trees greater than 6 inches in diameter, of which there are 203 on the subject property. We also discussed the proper compensation, where we agreed that where we were short of the 203 trees in the original design, we would include the additional trees, and we would also adjust the proposed sizes of the trees so that both the deciduous trees, the street trees, shade trees, would have a 4-inch caliper, and the evergreen trees would have a height of, I believe, 8 to 10 feet. So each tree would qualify as an equal replacement tree. So we are agreeable to those adjustments, and those will be reflected on any future submission of the site plan drawings. The other unresolved issue was with regard to the stormwater management. And as Mr. Alfieri had mentioned, we had numerous discussions and brain trust sessions with Mr. Matlack and came up with, we believe, to be an understanding and an agreement as to how the stormwater management, number one, shall be modified, how it shall be calculated, and how it shall be represented on any future submission. And that outline of the proposed modifications was in that letter of December 3rd, outlining each item present in Mr. Matlack's letter with regard to the stormwater management concerns he expressed. At this point, the variances that are being sought are, number one, we are proposing a change in grade. We are excavating at the northwest corner of the site because there is a significant grade change in there presently. And we're also filling at the southeastern end of the site to provide a level development area throughout the center core of the site. But again, we are changing the grade by more than 2 feet and request a variance accordingly. Associated with that change in grade is the combined fence and wall height, particularly in the northwest corner, where we have approximately 2 6-foot-high retaining walls. So the retaining walls themselves would have an overall height of 12 feet, and then the 4-foot-high safety fence on top of that would make the combined height of the walls and fences to be 16 feet. That's the second variance that we're requesting. The variance that we're seeking that triggered the use variance to start with was within the C4 RSSF zone. Warehouses are required, as a conditional use, are required to be 75 feet from the rear yard, and our northern property line qualifies as a rear yard, and we're only proposing 50 feet. The reasoning is that even though it is a technical rear yard, it's a functional side yard, bridging the side yard between Brielle Avenue and Bloomsbury Avenue. But because that was a conditional use requirement, that triggered the necessity to come before the Board of Adjustment for a use variance.
Hey, Dave, can I interrupt you for a second there? I have a question for Mr. Alfieri. There was I think a correspondence where you were changing what you were requesting from the D3 variance for conditional use to allow any use permitted in the I1 zone, which would make it a D1 variance and eliminate the D3. Has that been withdrawn?
No, we're seeking both. The bulk of the properties in the zone, the CES.
Yeah.
So that's the bulk of the property. We still want the right to use that property for those uses, but we added the light industrial zone uses, and Ms. Cafone will get into that a little more detail.
Okay.
So you need a D1 and a D3.
Yes.
Yeah.
The next variance that we're seeking is for the width of the curb islands of greater than 10 feet. There are a number of areas that they're irregular, so we are seeking that variance as well. Parking space size, where 10-foot wide spaces are required, we're proposing 9 feet wide with hairpin striping. Location of curb cuts within the center third of the property. Bloomsbury Avenue is is unimproved for the majority of its length along the southern edge of the site. So our curb cut to Bloomsbury Avenue does not fall within the center third of the Bloomsbury Avenue frontage. And I believe that was the list of the variances that are being sought with this application.
And I believe that concludes Mr. Bosch's testimony. Mr. Chair is prepared to answer any questions the board or the public or the board professionals have.
Okay, anybody from the board have a question for this expert?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to jump in real quick. I agree with Mr. Bosch's testimony. I liked his phrasing, a few brain trust sessions that he and I have had, as well as with some of the other professionals. We did come to an agreement on how the stormwater management would be calculated, and I don't have any issues with his December 3rd letter.
Thank you, sir, for that. Any other board members? If not, is there anyone from the public have a question for this witness? All right, no questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Next witness is James Montfort, our architect. Jim, are you there?
You're muted, Jim. Mr. Montfort, you're muted.
Looks like he's trying. There he is.
Okay, sorry. Fell asleep there for a minute.
Was he sworn in the last go around?
He was not.
Okay. Sir, can you please welcome to the board, raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And to state your name, and you've testified before this board in the past, I believe.
Yes, I have. James J. Montfort, 733 Route 35, Ocean Township, New Jersey.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Counselor.
Thank you. And Jim, you're the architect that prepared the plans that we're going to be discussing momentarily. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you want to share the screen too, right?
I would assume I would need to share the screen, yeah, unless if Dave has it.
Sorry, Ron.
There we go. Mr. Montfort. Boom. You're all set?
I don't know if it's coming up. Oh, I think I'm here. It's a little small. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is the architectural set. I guess I really could just go through it briefly with you. This shows basically what could be designated as separate tenant spaces. They're not defined at this point, but we have boxed in areas showing the percentage of office and possible separation. So one tenant may take the whole thing. One tenant may take a couple sections. So this is the 3,300 plus building. The top of the page is where the loading docks will be, and that faces the other building B, the loading docks of building B, as presented by David. And then this is building B, which is the smaller of the two buildings. This is the 1,600 square foot building. Again, it has the loading docks on the back side, and it also shows the 20% office space. So our building elevations are, it's an industrial building. It's corrugated metal and with a stone base, a concrete granite faced stone base for the first, I believe, 10 feet or so. And there's storefronts for each of the entrance to the what would be the office space area on the front of the building. And then in the back on the loading zone side, you can see it. We have these depressions where the loading docks are, so the trucks can go back in, and it's a raised platform, so there's no lifts required. Along the bottom of the page, I can go over the signs with you in a minute, but you can see there's an identification sign on each of these black canopies that stick off the building over each entryway, and those will be a raised, just a raised letter, just to identify what tenant space it is. And above that, we have over each building tenant, we have space for a box sign. And the only reason why I picked this is because you don't know if the tenants are going to be there for a long time. Some may move in or out, and you end up with holes all over the building. So by doing a box sign, you're able to replace the face of the sign and not mutilate the facade of the building with holes everywhere. So this gives the flexibility of changing tenants if necessary or when that happens. This sheet indicates the signage. I have it all listed here. This is the raised letter sign. These would be building identification signs. So if I have to go back a page. So these signs would be on, On the lower portion, you can see building A and B. They would be these larger signs that just signify the building and the number, and they're backlit raised letters, and that would be this type. And then these are the box signs, and then these are just the standoff letters that are over the main entrances. The materials, the metal panels are 3 colors. Basically, we have the this rocky gray color, which is a grayish greenish, and then we have this silversmith color, and that's indicated on my rendering here. The lighter color is silversmith, and this is the rocky. And then the canopies are black, and then this is the stone that's at the base of the building. The bottom is the optional wall design for hiding the optional storage, the exterior storage in the back from the street. So that's basically what the buildings are and what they will look like when they're done. They're prefabricated metal frames. I'm sure you've all seen industrial type buildings before, and that's what we're proposing architecturally.
Are these fully sprinklered buildings?
I haven't gotten that far along into my analysis of the construction type. Most likely the bigger one is probably sprinklered. The smaller one, maybe not. But it's really, I really have to do code compliance to determine that full code compliance.
Does any board members have any questions for this expert? If no board members, is there anyone from the public that has a question for this expert? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. And our last witness, because we do have D relief and C relief, we have Christine Cafone, our planner.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Can you raise your right hand?
Sure.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name.
My name is Christine Nazzaro, Nazzaro. Cafone is C-O, F as in Frank, O-N-E. Business address is 125 Half Mile Road, Suite 200, Red Bank, New Jersey, 07701.
And you've testified before us before, correct?
Yes, I have testified here and in excess of 400 or something other planning and zoning boards. So my licenses are current and valid still.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you. Christine, you heard the testimony from the last meeting along with this meeting and have reviewed the plans and the township ordinance and master plan, and you understand the variance relief we're seeking. Can you explain the variances and then justify the relief that we're seeking under the municipal land use law?
Certainly. So good evening, Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Christine Cafone. The variances that we're seeking here, it's straightforward but a little confusing, just given the configuration of this property being split zoned. So this site is going to be split between the LI and the C4 RSSF zone, which is the Regional Shopping Support Facility zone. So I would submit to the board that the LI and the C4 RSSF are some of the most permissive zoning districts in the township. The problem for us is that we are not able to bring in all of the LI zones on the portion of our property that we want to build this new building. So what we're doing is we're seeking D variance relief to allow for the continued use of those C4 RSSF uses, but also to bring in the permitted uses in the LI zone. Now, we have requested for all of the uses in the LI zone to be incorporated into the new building on proposed lot 4.01. Your planner, Mr. Higgins, issued 2 reports on this application, one dated October 30th of 2021 and one dated December 13th of 2021. In his December 13th, 2021, he asked us from a planning point of view, could we please consider to narrow down those uses that are in the LI zone, or in the LI zone that you would like to have on your site, because that will make it more easy for my board to evaluate what you're proposing to do here. So we discussed it as a team. Again, I think we used the brain trust. We put our brain trust together and huddled on it. And what we did was we looked at section 21-39.1 of your ordinance, which lists the permitted uses in the LI zone. And as a team, we decided that in order to get this property to a productive point, we could live with use number 1, which talks about manufacturing, fabrication, and assembly of light machinery and products. Use number 3, and again, I'm reading from section 21-39.1 of your code, which talks about wholesale sales and distribution, excluding truck terminals or bulk distribution and terminals. 4, which included warehousing, including self-storage and mini warehousing facilities. I should submit to the board that the C4 zone does allow as, the RSSF 5 does allow as a conditional use warehousing. So that's why there was a little confusion earlier in that there are conditional use standards for warehousing in the C4 RSF zone. So one of those conditions where you allow warehouses, we violate only one of them, which is the rear yard setback. So that's why we're also asking for a D3 and a D1. I think the D1 probably covers all of it since warehouses are specifically listed in the LI. But I'll go on to the other uses. The other uses are we're asking to other light industrial uses similar to those listed above, which do not require chemical process outside storage of materials and supplies or cause of the emission of environmental pollutants into the environment. 10 is retail sale and service uses.
Okay, skip. Just Christine, just go back to saying, you said 4. What was the next number after 4?
5.
I didn't hear 5. And then now you're going to 10, right?
Now we're skipping to 10, right? Again, continuing on the list right out of your zoning code, we're at number 10, which reads retail sales and service uses, which are related directly to any manufacturing or warehousing use of the building, provided that such uses are located in and occupy no more than 25% of the gross floor area of the principal building. The next one is mail order and or telephone sales and distribution facility. That's 11, number 11 in your code. 10 and 11. And then we skip over to number 13, which talks about automotive detailing. So in an effort to be responsive to Mr. Higgins, we wanted to narrow down the list of permissible uses that we would be asking for. Now, the reason collectively from a planning point of view, again, we need the D1 variance. So as the planner, we had to substantiate the burden of proof as to why this site is particularly suited for those uses and do special reasons exist. And then if we get through all that to deal with the negative criteria. So I think in numerous pieces of correspondence relating to the review of this application, it has been described as an irregular piece of property. Mr. Higgins describes it as such. Mr. Kirk, the Director of Community Development, in his October 19th, 2021 report describes it as such. It's an irregularly shaped parcel that doesn't have the greatest road frontage for a variety of commercial uses. So the use program that we are proposing, in my opinion, as a planner, takes advantage of the location of the property, considers the fact that it's an irregularly shaped property and that it doesn't, and these are a program of uses that don't need to rely on pass-by traffic or great road frontage to be successful here. And regardless of if the LI or C4 RSSF F is, or RSSF is applied, this is a commercial zoning district, and we as planners appreciate that we use our commercial zoning districts to stabilize our tax bases, and we want to see them developed. So I do think that the site is particularly suitable for the proposed use program. As far as the special reasons or purposes of municipal land use law that I would think would be advanced by this application, I think the board can rely on criteria G, which talks about sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses. We need very little bulk variance relief other than that rear yard setback, which really functions as a a side yard, in my opinion. We need very little bulk variance relief. We are completely conforming with the coverage and the other limitations. And so I think the board can certainly be assured that there's sufficient space. Criteria M talks about an efficient use of the land. This is what I would consider a challenging site to find a tenant base for. So I think the proposed warehouse building that we have proposed here takes advantage of the site's location and allows the site to be put to a more productive use. And so therefore we can rely on criteria M. And I also think criteria I can be advanced by this application, which talks about a desirable visual environment. Mr. Montfort was careful to avoid monolithic walls and unattractive building elevations here. And I think that certainly, despite the fact that the site doesn't have great highway visibility, it is across from Costco, and people will see it when they go there and when people come to the area. So we want to make sure that while not in a super highway traveled area, that the structure had curb appeal. And I think we accomplished that. So statutorily, we only have to satisfy one purpose of the municipal land use law, but I believe that criteria G, criteria M, and criteria I are all satisfied or would be satisfied by the grant of this application. So that leaves us with a burden of proof with respect to the negative criteria. And the negative criteria does not ask you to hold us or any other applicant to such a standard that there be no detriment, just that the benefits of the grant of the variance would outweigh any detriment, and that there would be no substantial detriment on either the impact of the zone plan or the public good here in Ocean Township. So when you look at the zone pack and you unpack what that C4RSSF is all about, I stopped counting at 100 permitted uses in the C4 zone. It's a really permitted uses, and I would say it's a retail heavy list of permitted uses. And the RSSF zone is similarly a permissive district that's encouraged to look for regional shopping centers. I just don't know that this is the greatest site that you're going to create a regional shopping center on. Those type of uses really need more visibility and frontage and size than the subject property can offer. So I think that allowing the site to develop with the program that we've proposed allows it to be developed with commercial development, which is clearly what was envisioned for this area, hundreds of uses contemplated for this area. And I think it does so in a sensible way that it will not have a substantial detrimental impact on the zone plan. And in fact, will allow for us to carry out the purpose and intent of the zone plan. Rather, the purpose and intent of the light industrial development is to provide for the development of light industrial, office, and limited retail commercial uses, which are compatible with the industrial nature of the I-1 zone in Ocean Township, and to provide for a compatible land use relationship within the I-1 zone and uses as well as between uses within the I-1 zone and uses in adjacent zones. So I think when you look at that specific purpose, which talks about to provide for a compatible land use relationship with the I-1 zone, as well as between uses within the I-1 zone, I think the board can be very comfortable that with that limited use list that we've provided tonight, that we're accomplishing and advancing those purposes in that zone. As such, it would be appropriate to allow those uses here on this site. And as far as the impact on the public good, I see no substantial detriment to the public good. Again, we took care as a project team to make sure that the buildings were going to be attractive. Mr. Bosch took care to make sure that we were not creating any adverse drainage impacts on the site. He did testify as to the retaining walls and the fence sites that were required to develop the property. And he also testified that the development will not translate to any adverse drainage impacts. So collectively, I think we meet our statutory burden of proof here for the grant of the variances that are associated with this application. And I am confident that the variances can be granted with no substantial detriment to either the zone plan or the public good.
And Ms. Cofone, just one follow-up question. In terms of the various uses that could potentially go into this property, if it's approved, the applicant will conform to the parking. So the intensity of the uses will be controlled by parking. And if the combination of uses were to exceed required parking, they would have to come back to this board. Is that correct?
Yes, I should have stipulated that in the negative criteria. So I know we have some new board members tonight. So what essentially Mr. Alfieri just indicated is that we're proposing to have multiple tenants in this building. So say, for example, we had an auto detailing use, and we had a storage use, and then we had another use that was going to do fulfilling online orders of screen printed t-shirts. We would make sure that we had enough parking for all of those uses, and that our combination of tenants doesn't create a parking situation on this site. And if it did, and we put ourselves into a situation where our tenant base was going to require more parking than your ordinance would require, we would have to come back to the board and seek relief.
Thank you. That's all we have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, does anyone from the board have a question for this expert? Does anyone from the public have a question for this expert? All right.
That concludes our presentation, Mr. Chair. If you would open it to the public for comments.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did have one question. I just couldn't unmute myself.
Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
On that last point, just to amplify, if you have tenants and you don't have enough parking for them, you'll come back to us with a plan for parking, or to ask us to say it's okay not to have the parking?
Well, what would happen is, as part of your CO process, your zoning officer will make sure, as each tenant is CO'd, they will check the parking to make sure there's adequate parking on site. If we exceed at some point the parking requirement, we would either not allow that tenant to move in and or come back to the board for a variance. But there you have internal controls at the township to deal with that.
Yeah, the
so
board.
you'd come back to us if our ordinance, if on paper the number of spaces that you would be required for the ordinance doesn't necessarily make sense in your specific case, is what you're saying.
Or we would not take that tenant because it's not worth the effort to come for the variance.
Right, got it. Okay, thank you.
All right, does anyone from the public have any questions? If not, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Abstain. I don't think I was part of the meeting in October, so I'm abstaining.
This is just to close the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You
Yes.
You can vote on that. Okay.
Mr. DeGenero,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Okay, before we go on, Ms. Tallarico, you're not going to vote on this application, right?
That's what I'm saying. I wasn't part of October, so I don't think I can. So I'm either
So
abstaining
that's okay. Then Mr. Pugliello would become eligible as the seventh voter. So when we go for the vote, Amy, you'll call it that way, okay?
I wasn't here for the October meeting myself.
Okay, so then we're down to 6 then, right? We had 8, we now have 6. Anybody else need to recuse themselves not having been eligible?
I think they were part of the tapes that we listened to, weren't they, Amy?
I didn't get that tape. I was sent tape for 3 other people, not that one.
Okay.
You got Seaview, Greenstein, and this one, right?
I got 2 sea views and a Greenstein.
So did I.
I think that's what I got too. Yeah.
Who just said that, the last one?
DeGenero.
Oh, I'm sorry, up in that corner. So you're not eligible, so that brings us down to 5. So we have a choice, Mr. Alfieri. You can go with 5 eligible voters, or you could request these board members to listen to those transcripts and come back next month for a vote. This is your decision.
I know it's
You
a hard
need, I know you need in the board, for the board's edification, we're going to vote on the first thing we'd vote on is a D1 and a D3 combined, okay? Because maybe the D1 includes the D3, but if not, you need the D3 because you're only 25 feet off from the front yard setback in the C4R SSF zone on the building. So we
Mark,
vote those together.
Mark, would it
Go ahead.
be out of place to take a straw poll as to the board members' feelings on this, which may make Mr. Alfieri's decision easier?
Okay, of the 5 eligible voters, does anybody have any negative feelings on this?
Any concerns?
Pardon me?
You're muted, John.
Sorry, I have no concerns.
Okay. Anybody else have any concerns?
It's Manel, I have no concerns.
Feel none.
Chairman Burrell?
Well, no concerns.
Is there one more? That's it? Do we get everybody? All right. So Mr. Alfieri,
I only heard 4. Sorry.
so did I. Who did we miss?
I think
think
Jack.
maybe.
Eric?
I have no concerns.
It was Eric. Okay. So you heard from the five eligible voters. So do you want to proceed with 5?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So we need someone to make a motion for the D1 and the D3. Now, the D3 is the condition that they don't meet for the 75-foot setback on the building. And the D1 is to permit the limited if I'm saying this right, L1 uses as set forth, and we gave, Ms. Caffone gave the numbers, in the C4R SSF zone section of the site. Is that correct?
Yes.
Christine, too? Yeah, I'm
Yes,
not
Mr.
checking.
Steinberg, yes, that's correct.
Listen, this is not easy, especially on Zoom.
Yes, and I'll be glad to send you those ordinance sections for your resolution if you need them.
Sure, why not? I'll take them. I don't have to look them up.
I'll move
That'd
the
be fine.
D1
So
and
that would be the
D3
first
together.
vote. We need, pardon me?
I make a motion to move the D1 and the D3 together.
Yes, yes, I would.
I don't think you need the D3 if you want to do it to be conservative, but I think the D1.
We'll throw it in. It's the same resolution. We'll have it, okay?
Okay.
Just in case there's ever a question that we didn't consider it, we'll throw it in because it's been advertised for, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would, okay?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Okay, then the next thing I like to do is the bulk variances. And there are more bulk variances than are set forth in Jim's report, which I thought didn't they testify to 3 others that were necessary? I have the notes. Let me just get them, okay? In Jim's report, we'll be voting on a change in grade, as Dave testified to tonight, the necessity, the height of the wall fence, which is because of the change in grade and the necessity to a retaining wall. And then he talked about the width of the curb islands. The parking space is 9 feet instead of 10 feet, and the location of the curb cuts unless, within the, on the site. And Jim, they're not in this report anyhow.
No, they're not in the report. No.
But they are needed.
Yeah, they're needed, yes.
Yeah, so that would be a total of 5 variances. Does anybody have more?
No.
That's enough.
The report?
That's
No,
enough.
I don't know if there's any others that, because of the time, listen, between meetings, several months between meetings and different reports and Zoom, sometimes everything doesn't get set up the way it should be. So I just want to make sure we're covering all the variances that I can see.
Yeah.
Would be the height of the wall, the change in grade, the width of the curb islands, 10 foot wide to 9 foot wide parking spaces. And are you putting in hairpin with that, Dave?
Yes.
They'd be here, and that's shown on the site plan anyhow, right? And the location of the curb cuts, not in the center 1/3.
Mhm.
So those would be the bulk variances.
Does the rear yard setback of 75 feet also need to be restated in the site plan, or is
No. No,
No? Okay.
It's not a variance?
that's it. That's the
The
C3
D3.
variance or the D3 variance. It's not a C variance.
Right.
Yeah, okay, it's not a bulk, it's actually the D3, it's the conditional use. So we're gonna
Right.
have it in the D3 variance in that resolution. Oh, that's the same one, okay. So those are the 5 bulk variances. Somebody make a motion before I
I'll
forget them.
move the 5 variances.
I'll second.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
And the last thing would be the site plan, and I think as part of the site plan, you are present, this is gonna be a modified tree location and preservation plan, right? This is what I gathered from Dave.
It's going to be a tree location and preservation plan. They're going to comply with the requirements of the ordinance, but they're going to have to submit the information, the plan and the information.
Okay, so that design waiver is not gonna be granted.
What's that?
That's a design waiver, we're not granting it.
That will not be granted. That's correct. They have to.
And
comply.
you've met with Dave on site to which trees and how everything's
Well,
going.
I've
So
met
we-
with him to generally discuss which trees have to be done, but he's done a count. He's going to have to submit a plan and then
I
submit a landscape plan showing the replacement trees. And if there's a difference, they're going to have to make up the difference financially.
Which is the ordinance. So they're
Yes.
gonna comply with the ordinance.
Yes.
So that waiver does not have to be granted. It would just now, the only other vote would be the site plan. And there's a,
And the lot line adjustment,
and there's a minor subdivision with this too, right?
right? The
That
lot
line
line,
adjustment is considered a minor subdivision, isn't it?
correct. That's
So,
correct.
so great. So we got a lot of these tonight. So the last thing would be to move for the site plan as presented and the minor subdivision to adjust the lot lines.
I'll move that.
Morel. Mr. who? Fuller is moving it, right?
I'll second.
Amy?
Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Okay.
That's everything. Thank you all very
Got
much.
your 5 votes. New board members, the last 2 or 3 applications have been out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And they're usually not like this, and you've done a great job in
Thanks,
understanding
everybody.
them.
Good
We
luck.
consider it a learning curve.
Yes.
No, but they did it. These are out of the ordinary. There's a lot of stuff going on in one application, and I think you guys have done great.
We've
Pardon
had
me?
car clubs. We have it all right now. So
Does anybody need a break before we continue on
Yeah.
for 3 to
Yeah.
5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
we can always go to the Burke compound there on the right hand corner
Yeah.
of my screen, where they're having Thanksgiving once again during a meeting, but that's okay.
All right. We'll be back in 4 to 5 minutes.
Okay, and the next application will be Mr. Whittick's 335 Roosevelt.
35 Roosevelt.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm ready on that. I'm gonna step outside and get a breath of fresh air myself, and I'll see you guys in a bit.
Okay. Thank you all. Okay, let's go to. Who that?
Okay, wait a second.
Mr. Whittick, we're just going to end the meeting now.
What?
I said, we're just going to end the meeting now. You see, I thought I'd get you off guard a little bit there.
Wow. I
See,
think I
you didn't see that one?
I think if I'm lucky, I can do this in 45 minutes.
And I thought we were going to bump him to the end and do the other two first.
I thought that was a better idea also, but we just,
Geez,
Yeah.
what did I do to get on your guys' bad guy list?
No, Bob, it was just hilarious because I know you well enough that you get into the zone prior to putting on a case. So you were in that you're looking at your stuff, you're getting everything in line, and I threw that out there, and you're like, wait a second, what just hit me there? No, we're getting through everything this evening.
Yeah, I'm just
Case number 9 on still?
No, it only goes through 6. The newest one goes through Cunningham.
Cunningham is the last one?
Correct.
Okay. So, Gindi is on?
Who's Gindi?
Janet and Joseph Gindi?
No, it is not.
No, they're not on.
I see we have 3 more cases, which are 335 Roosevelt, Omar and Shai Crowler,
Gotcha.
and Jennifer Cunningham. That's it.
Okay. All right, good. Is everybody back? Amy, you there?
I am.
So Ron, we're going to suspend our rule about no new cases after 10 p.m.
I don't know about suspend, but adjust for the evening so we can get through these cases.
Yeah, does anybody have a problem? Can we get through 3 more cases? All right, let's begin. Let's talk about case number, let's see, 5 on my schedule. It's 335 Roosevelt Avenue LLC, Block 19, Lot 3, 335 Roosevelt Avenue, Ocean, on R4 zone. This is an application to install an in-the-ground pool with surrounding concrete with pre-existing non-conformities for the rear, front, and side yard setbacks, as well as a lot width and lot coverage. We have tonight the attorney representing the applicant, Robert Wintick.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, learned professionals. My name is Robert Whittick. I'm a partner with the law firm of Resnikoff, and Whittick. I have the privilege this evening of appearing before you on behalf of 335 Roosevelt Avenue. You've basically articulated exactly what it is that this application is all about. In terms of a brief opening statement, just to give you an idea of what we hope to prove, this is really sort of the second bite at the apple. We tried a couple of years ago to do something similar, and it didn't go over very well. So what we did was we tweaked the application, and then of course the pandemic hit. But I will like to defer to Patrick Ward, who's a professional planner and engineer from Insight Engineering. And with the permission of the board, I would ask that Mr. Ward be sworn.
Okay, but Mr. Counselor, I'd like to hear from our professionals first, and then we'll go into your
okay
testimony. Mr. Higgins.
Yeah, but I'll read my report. It's not.
Just wait a second. Wait. Amy, could you mark the board packet as B1?
Yes.
Okay. Go, Jim.
Now, Mr. Whittick is correct. The applicant had previously submitted an application that was somewhat aggressive, and it didn't go very well. This is scaled back considerably. I'll read my report. And the applicant is proposing to construct a pool surround and fencing, and to reconfigure an existing driveway. The site is an irregularly shaped 7,617 square foot corner lot with 74.42 square feet, and that should be feet of frontage on Roosevelt Avenue and 145.46 feet of frontage on Cedar Avenue. Because of the irregular shape, it has a non-conforming lot width of approximately 68 feet, which 90 feet is required, and a non-conforming rear lot line of 32.58 feet, where 45 feet is required. Because of the long, narrow, and irregular shape of the lot, and the fact that there is a corner that fact that it is a corner lot requiring 30 feet front yard setback on both streets. The building envelope is very small, and the existing residence is significantly non-conforming with regard to front and side yard setbacks. The lot area is also non-conforming. 10,000 square feet is required, and 67,617 square feet exists. None of these pre-existing non-conformities are impacted by the proposed development. The applicant previously submitted a plan for a 16 by 33-foot pool with pool surround around the entire pool. The revised plans reduce the area of the pool to 10.5 feet by 22 feet, with pool surround only on two sides of the pool, a small patio between the house and the pool, and a 3-foot wide walkway on the west side of the pool. Variances are necessary for minimum front and side yard setbacks of an accessory structure. The ordinance requires that accessory structures other than buildings, pools, patios, etc., must maintain the required 30-foot front yard setback and 10-foot side and rear yard setbacks. The proposed pool is set back 22 feet from Cedar Street, which is the front yard, and 7 feet from the west side property line. Clearly, there's a practical and undue hardship with regard to the unique shape and configuration of the lot. Consequently, the positive criteria aspect of the application is evident. The reduction of the size of the pool and pool surrounding, significant increase in the setback from Cedar Street alleviate my prior concerns regarding the impact of the pool. Maximum fence height: the ordinance limits the height of any pool fence in a front yard to 5 feet, provided the fence is no more than 15 feet from the pool surround. The fence is approximately 6 feet from the pool surface, and a 5-foot high fence is proposed. The plan proposes a 6-foot high fence surrounding the pool. The setback of the fence varies from 25 feet at the northeast corner of the residence to approximately 9 feet at the northernmost point of the Cedar Avenue frontage. No fence detail is provided, so that it's not possible to determine if it is a solid fence. While I see no compelling reason why a conforming fence cannot be constructed, a 6-foot high fence will provide additional privacy. Given the constraints of the site, I have no significant concerns with the proposed fence height, as long as it is an attractive fence and is adequately screened from view from Cedar Street. The applicant should provide a detail of the fence for the board's consideration. I recommend that any variance approval be conditioned upon a landscape plan being submitted showing adequate screening of the fence from Cedar Street. Maximum driveway width: the ordinance limits the width of a driveway in a front yard to 20 feet. The need for this variance has been eliminated. Additional comments: it should be noted that the proposed development will reduce the impervious coverage on the site from 48.49% of buildable lot area to 45.91% of buildable lot area. The zoning officer requests that, due to ongoing concerns with work being done on the property, the applicant should submit an updated grading slant variance plan showing any and all changes, i.e. hedges, paver, patios, fencing, etc.
All right, thank you, Mr. Higgins. Mr. Matlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I reviewed this plan and I had a couple of comments. It looks like that there is some surface runoff from the pool that is directed towards the neighboring lot, Lot 2. I'd like a little testimony about that, and I'm sure Mr. Ward would be able to provide that. It also looks like there may be an additional patio in the front yard to the east of the building that we should get some clarification on. Other than that, the applicant is responsible for a road opening permit for the driveway expansion, and all construction in the township right away should conform to the township construction standards. I don't see any details on the plans. Perhaps those should be provided as well for curb, pavement, and driveway.
Okay, thank you, sir. Counselor, you can proceed with your experts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd call right at this point in time, Patrick Ward from Insight Engineering, please.
Welcome, Mr. Ward. Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, address, and have you testified before us before?
I have.
Oh, thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Sure. Patrick Ward, WARD with Insight Engineering. Office address is 1955 Route 34, Suite 1A, Wall, New Jersey, 07719.
Mr. Ward, you just mentioned that you'd appeared before this board and have been qualified as an expert. Can you tell us how many times?
In front of this board, probably anywhere from 5 to 10. I'm trying to remember. I mean,
Okay.
But several times, we'll say.
And you've been qualified in terms of planning and engineering?
Yes, in both capacities.
Okay. I would ask that Mr. Ward be recognized as an expert.
Okay, we'll recognize him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ward, did you have an opportunity to review the letters that were prepared by CNA Engineering and also by Mr. Higgins?
I have reviewed both board professional letters, yes.
Okay, and you're obviously familiar with this project?
I am. While I didn't prepare the plan that was submitted before the board, I had a chance to review it thoroughly with you, Mr. Mizrahi, the applicant, and compare it to the board correspondence.
And would you describe, please, the premises as it presently exists as briefly as you can?
I'm going to ask Ron kindly here to allow me to share.
Thank you.
If you don't mind.
Not at all.
It'll be a little easier to walk through what's there today and what changes we're making.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're all set.
Ron, thank you. Understand that
Thank
I am
you.
completely helpless when it comes to this stuff.
I am not. Okay. So what I have here, and Bob, if you can correct me on what the exhibit number is of this, unless it is already entered as part of the board packet.
I took the whole packet in. I asked the board to take the whole packet as A1 cumulatively.
Okay. So this is the plan prepared by Midstate Engineering, last revised July 27th, 2020. And what this shows is, and I'll really focus on the plan view of it. This shows the property. North is up on the plan sheet. There isn't a north arrow, which we'll be happy to add. Basically, to echo what Mr. Higgins
there is, though. If you look to the right, I think there is an.
Oh, there it is. Look at that, tucked away. Sorry, it's on my plan. So that's my apologies. To echo what Mr. Higgins said, that this isn't a regularly shaped lot. It's undersized for this zone. We're in the R4 zone. We're at the corner of Roosevelt Avenue and Cedar Street. And really this view here clearly shows, how the property tapers from front to back, and front would be where the house faces on Roosevelt Avenue, about 75 feet wide here along the frontage. And as you can see at the very rear, just over 30 feet in the rear property line width. So again, a very unusual lot in terms of geometry, and the fact that it's a corner lot constrains it further. So a little bit of description about the existing property. The existing dwelling is 1.5 stories. It doesn't fit within the existing building envelope, as Mr. Higgins mentioned. That's an existing non-conforming condition to remain. What the applicant's proposing to do here is propose a pool in what is his rear yard. From a practical sense, the pool is 10 by 22, as you can see on this plan. And there's a modest pool patio between the house and the pool. And then there's also a 3-foot walkway on the west side of the pool. The other improvements or changes that the applicant's proposing is significantly trimming an existing driveway at the property. And you could see that by this line, this angular line hatch. We're removing about 660 square feet of driveway. Right now, it's an excessively wide driveway. It actually is a non-conforming condition based on width. We're seeking to eliminate that non-conformity and really make the driveway significantly smaller. It still has enough parking off-street as required by the ordinance. And this particular, proposal here is much more, it's significantly smaller than what was originally offered. And I did have a chance to review that original plan that Mr. Whittick had provided me. And yes, this is, in my opinion, and as I'll get into with the justification here, a much better alternative than what was previously offered, and really, doesn't have an impact on any neighbors or the zone plan. A couple other improvements, really minor here, is the the fence. And what we're proposing here is what is a typical 6-foot solid privacy fence for what would normally be a rear yard swimming pool. Unfortunately, with this location, we don't have the benefit of having a true rear yard. Part of our rear yard, from a practical sense, is in the front yard. And that leads to some of the variance relief that's required. As you could see, the portion of the fence is in the front yard. And the front yard is defined as the area between the nearest point of the structure, the building, and that front property line on Cedar. So that 6-foot fence does enter the front yard, and we're seeking relief for that.
Mr. Wood, let me stop you right there and just ask you a quick question. In terms of the fence and the front yard variance, that doesn't interfere with any site triangles or anything like that, does it?
It does not. It's set back enough from the traveled way of Cedar Street. And the driveway that is remaining here has really there's no impact from the fence whatsoever.
Okay.
It's somewhat in line with the side of the home, not quite perfectly, but as you can see, it does follow the line of that eastern side of the home.
Okay, just wanted to get that out there. Proceed, Mr. Ward.
So, Mr. Matlack noted in his review letter, and he mentioned it at the beginning of this application, that there is an existing front patio at the property that's not shown on this plan. Based on my review of this property and analysis, we agree with that. There is a patio in this area between the existing deck and Cedar Street. So it is in the front yard. The patio is 10 feet wide, and I say wide as in from left to right on the plan sheet, and about 40 feet in length. It's about 400 square feet. And it's, by my measurements, 3.5 feet from the Cedar Street right-of-way. So in speaking with the applicant, he stated to me that the patio is used for outdoor seating, and is basically, a recreation area today for, he and his family, just for, some outdoor recreation space. One thing that this plan does not show, and I think this will segue into one of Mr. Higgins' requests, is along both frontages, except where the driveway exists today, Mr. Mizrahi has a continuous row, single row of emerald green arborvitae that are along the entirety of both frontages, except for where the driveway is. That's to remain. That he keeps that trim to about 5 feet in height. And it's easy to see, really, as you drive past the property. He's seeking to keep that. And the reason I bring that up is because those evergreens do block the view of that patio from the street. It gives him a sense of privacy, and also limits any impact from, him and his family sitting in that front yard. So the request of the applicant is for the patio to remain. That does change, some of the aspects of the application. Before the patio issue was raised, there was an indication that the total square footage of the total impervious coverage on the property was to be reduced slightly. With the inclusion of the patio, the total impervious coverage on site is to now increase by about 250 square feet, which compared to the entire lot size is a minimal increase, and is still about half of the maximum lot coverage permitted in this zone and at this property. And I'll get into more about potential impacts of that as I proceed. Mr. Matlack also mentioned a concern about runoff from the western side of the pool, surface runoff from the new improvements heading west towards Lot 2. In my review of the plans, I would agree with that concern. I think it's something that's relatively simple to address. And discussing with the applicant, Mr. Mizrahi's happy to adjust the drainage with either updated grading or even some surface drainage to ensure that that neighbor to the west will not be affected at all by any surface runoff.
And Mr. Ward, you feel that can be accomplished in a reasonably appropriate manner as a post-resolution compliance issue, should the board feel compelled to grant this relief?
Sure. In this case, I think the applicant's happy to work with his professionals to come up with a solution that's also agreeable with Mr. Matlack.
And it's not unusual for that to happen, right?
We see that often. I think the point here is that we're happy to address that comment to the board engineer's satisfaction as a condition of approval. Yes.
Okay. Okay, please continue.
Okay, so now I'm gonna list the variances again, even though, I know the board professionals walked through this, but I want to just list them again.
I think you have two new variances, so let's talk about those too. Go ahead.
Right, and that was what I was gonna get to, Mr. Steinberg. So
That's good.
first, I'll start with the pool itself and that we have setbacks. We have a front yard setback of 22 feet where 30 feet is required, and the pool is in the front yard. And then we have a side yard setback for the pool of 7 feet where 10 feet is required. One thing I want to mention about this is there's that 3-foot walkway on the west side of the pool is, something that the township usually permits as an emergency, and I say emergency with a little bit of air quotes, but a kind of a safety walkway around a pool.
Jim, chime in. I don't think if it's 3 feet or under, we don't count it, right? Jim? Is Jim here?
That's correct. I was muted. I didn't realize it.
Okay, but that 3 feet surround, we consider that a walkway. We don't consider that a pool deck.
That's right.
All right, so you don't need a variance for that. Okay.
So no side yard setback variance required.
Not for the pool surround because it's 3 feet wide and we consider that a walkway.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Setback is to the pool surface, not to the sidewalk.
Okay, great. So we're providing 10 feet on that western side of the pool. So really it's the front yard setback of 22 feet where 30 feet is required. That's the pool setback variance required. We also have the fence height where we're proposing a 6-foot solid fence, which is within the front yard, where a maximum height of 5 feet is permitted, so long as it's within 50.
I don't think 5 feet is permitted. I think it's 3 feet solid and 4 feet open, right?
4 feet open, that's correct.
Right, so
Yeah,
so if you have a solid fence, you have 3 feet. So and what is it, 30 feet back, Jim? For the front yard
yeah,
here?
30 feet, that's correct.
Well,
Okay,
right.
that-
We were asking for a variance for the fence, Mark, and the
I
idea.
got it. I got it. You want a 6-foot fence within the front yard? Got it.
Right.
And that tapers down. We have those dimensions.
Right.
Correct.
Front yard tapers down or up, whatever you call it. Go ahead.
Actually, because it's a pool fence, 5 feet is permitted.
That was my understanding, because it's
Yeah,
within
yeah.
a certain
Even
distance
in
of the pool.
even in a
correct.
front yard?
Yes.
Even in a front yard, Jim?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. You want
But-
6,
but
but
there is a variance for the height of the hedge also.
well, I was gonna, we need variances for the hedge and for the existing front yard patio.
Right. Those were the
Yeah.
two that Mr. Steinberg mentioned. So that's the two additional points of relief that we would be seeking. One is the patio. That patio of that nature is not permitted in the front yard. And so the setback we're seeking, well, one for the location, but we're also seeking the setback of 3.5 feet to remain. The hedge,
Jim, that would be a 30-foot requirement basically in the front yard for that
Yeah.
patio? Yeah, okay. So I understand what you want. I just want to get their numbers right.
Sure.
So you require 30, you have 3.5. And the hedge is again permitted at 3 feet.
That's permitted
This is-
at 4 feet.
Hedge is, okay,
Hedge
permitted.
is permitted at 4 feet, yes. I just reviewed that whole section of the ordinance to make
Okay,
sure.
I thought that became a solid fence, but it's okay.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
hedge.
there's a difference between if it was a solid fence, it would be 3 feet, but if it's a hedge, it's 4 feet.
4 feet, and they want to do it at 5 and continue it at 5.
Yes.
Okay, so the side yard setback is no longer necessary for the pool surround. Is that what you talked about?
That's correct.
we would agree with that.
So all you need is the pool variance at 22 feet from Cedar Street.
Correct.
Mr. Steinberg and Mr. Chairman and Mr. Higgins, I've been texting my client back and forth. We're going to abandon the patio. That'll get taken away.
Okay.
Okay.
So patio is out.
Yeah.
And if I
Okay,
had to
and so
venture-
that those 45% lot coverage stays back in, those numbers that are in the report.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so it's reducing the impervious coverage.
Okay, so the only extra variance he needs is to keep that hedge, which will then cover the fence. So, okay. Got it.
I would opine that I believe we can since the applicant trims the trees that are out there already. I think he could we could opine that we could do a 4-foot hedge, Mr. Whittick, except where I'm about to say in front of the fence that we're proposing.
Well, and I was going to say, look, if you're going to want us to buffer the fence instead of
Yeah,
having.
we want the 5-foot hedge.
Leave it
I
at
don't
5,
problem with that.
Jim?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, leave it at 5. Okay, but we'll condition the approvals on maintaining it at 5 feet.
Of course, but I
Okay.
think that's reasonable because you're going to want something to buffer the fence.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So do you think you need a landscaping plan, Jim, like you talked about?
Oh, God, no.
I think it would be good to have one just so there's something in the file. So if there's enforcement
but
issues, different owner
but
of the property 4 years down the road, there's a file on it and it can be enforced.
But where would he put the landscaping if he's got the
Well,
hedges?
You should show a plan with the existing hedge.
Okay.
And additional trees are being added by way of the driveway being removed.
Okay, gentlemen, how
Okay.
about the terms and conditions would be that they will comply with all of Jim Higgins' requirements for the property. Okay, and that way we can, get through this application before it turn into a pumpkin at midnight.
Got it.
We would agree with
Thank
that,
you.
right? We would absolutely.
That's fair.
And comply with the engineer. We got it. Okay.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Whittick, if I could jump into the planning justifications briefly, just to conclude my testimony.
You know what? Sometimes I've come to learn that when you catch a bus, you should stop running. I mean, if you want to talk for maybe 2 minutes, go ahead.
I'll be very brief just to put it on the record, and it'll echo what Mr. Higgins stated in his letter. The pool setback variance, in my opinion, is a C1 hardship. I think that's clear here, and as Mr. Higgins said, very evident based on the geometry of the lot. It's narrow, and the narrowness gets worse as you go further towards the rear of the property. That inhibits our ability to have a true rear yard and propose a pool that's fully within a rear yard. I would also argue that the fence height is a similar hardship in the sense that we have a very limited rear yard to propose a fence that could be 6 feet tall. If this were we'll say a normal lot that didn't have the narrowness of the taper that you see, we feel like we feel that we would be able to propose a 6-foot solid fence in our rear yard without having this front yard setback issue. The fence also could be analyzed as a flexible C2 in that, it doesn't have any impact on any of the neighbors. We're seeking to landscape it in front with this hedge that's going to be 5 feet in evergreen. That mitigates any visual impact of a 6-foot fence facing Cedar Street. Now that we're eliminating the patio that we discussed, the arguments that I was originally going to offer about the reduction in the impervious coverage, which is really a benefit and the opposite of an impact, they govern here. That's now opposite of any impact and an improvement. The elimination of the excessively wide driveway is also a significant improvement, and it's an elimination of an existing nonconformity. So, in my opinion, there really are no impacts now of this application on the public, on any of the neighbors, and on the ordinance and zone plan. So in my opinion, the positives of this and the benefits of this application substantially outweigh any detriments, which in our opinion are none, giving this board the ability to approve the application with confidence. And that concludes my testimony, Mr. Whittick.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. I would open up Mr. Ward to the board for any questions.
Board members have any questions for this expert? Does anyone from the public have questions for this expert? Okay, Counselor, you have any other testimony?
To be perfectly honest, Mr. Chairman, I have my client who's the property owner, but I don't know that he's going to add a whole lot more in terms of what we're doing in terms of the municipal, what we're asking for under the ordinance and the municipal land use law. I would say if you'd like to hear from him, you're certainly welcome to. I know you have a couple of applications that you're trying to move. So I would, under those circumstances, if you're comfortable, I'd ask for a vote. I think it's a textbook C1, C2 application. under the circumstances, given the shape and the size of the property.
Okay, since there's no questions from the public, I need to close the public hearing.
Mark,
Yes.
we asked for questions. We didn't ask for comments.
Right. Any comments from the public?
Any comments from the public? All right, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
A second, please. Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
I had a question.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't unmute myself fast enough. The 5-foot hedge, is that going to be?
Excuse me, ma'am, identify yourself, please, for the record and your address.
My name is Karen Doherty. I'm at 220 Cedar Street in Oakhurst. The 5-foot hedge, is that going to be all the way from Cedar all the way around the corner onto Roosevelt?
Pat, you with me?
I'm muted, sorry. That's the intention, yeah. We're requesting relief for 5 feet in all locations for the hedge.
Okay, can I make a comment now?
Yeah, by the way, does that exist or is this proposed?
It's already there.
Okay.
I agree.
So my comment is very often, and it's been there since the summer, the things has been there quite often and often was let to grow. And in the summer, Roosevelt Avenue is a bear to get out onto the road. It has been quite dangerous to try and get out onto Roosevelt Avenue. And I've always had to go the opposite direction because traffic, you just cannot see it when it's 5 feet high. He did try to make it a little easier by pulling the hedge back a bit. But still, with all the traffic, the cars parked on Cedar Street, it was impossible to see the traffic coming east on Roosevelt. So often we could not get out onto Roosevelt Avenue because of the height of the hedge. It made it a little dangerous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess we need, that's a reasonable question. We need to have both our engineer and the applicant's engineer address that. Could that corner be chamfered or something, and that those trees
Okay.
brought in a little further so there's a better sight triangle?
Yeah, Mark, what I was going to recommend is that a plan be submitted showing the site triangle and the location of the hedges, so we can confirm that it complies with the township ordinance as well as any other applicable standards.
Pat, we can make that work as a PRC issue, right?
I think Mr. Matlick took the words out of my mouth. I think that's the typical path we would take on that, is to show what is the current site triangle and if we need to improve that or make it
We
safe.
have to improve it, right? We'll improve it for sure.
He did try to do an effort to bring the hedge back somewhat, but in the middle of the summer, it's just a bear and you cannot see. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
For coming out, man.
All right, so we were in the middle of closing the public hearing, and I have a motion and a second. Amy, we're going to call a roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Now, Mr. Steinberg, you're up.
And this is an easy one. He'd like a bulk variance for the pool setback of 22 feet where 30 is required from Cedar Street, a 6-foot high fence surrounding the pool, which also is within the 30 feet of the front yard of Cedar Street, and 5 feet hedges around both street sites. And that would be subject to showing of same on a revised plan and an adequate site triangle to meet our ordinance requirement and any, is it ASHTO requirements on that? I don't know. Got the right initials?
Yeah, ASHTO.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, and is it whatever those requirements are, so that if the trees have to be moved back to be chamfered on that corner so that it'd be safe vision, he'll do it. But that's the variances he wants. Pool setback, height of fence and hedges.
All right, I need someone to offer.
Pardon me?
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, Ms. Tellerico.
I'm sorry. So once the variances are approved and with the line of sight variances and so forth, who monitors the growth or the overgrowth of these trees? Because, you know, it's a very good point about safety going onto the road.
That is typically done by code enforcement.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're agreeable to do something that's hopefully far enough out of the site triangle that will never become a problem.
And then the variance will also carry a condition that those evergreens remain at a height not to exceed 5 feet at all times. That's the
Exactly.
condition. If he violates those conditions, either code enforcement or
Comes out
Dougherty
later.
will call us and we'll get somebody out there for a violation.
Understood.
Okay, I need someone to offer what Mr. Steinberg had
I
proposed.
think Mr. Fuller did, didn't he?
Oh, did you, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, yes, I tried
And there was
to.
a second by whom?
I can second.
Was there?
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr.
Amy?
DeGennaro seconded. Amy, we're ready for a vote with the conditions I said.
Okay.
Just said.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
and Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
We only got 7 there somehow? I didn't count.
I counted 8, Mark, I think.
I think.
Everyone,
Didn't they
just to clarify the 8, okay? We drop it off in our paperwork, but since everyone took their time to come out every evening and they're part of every application, we love the input. We just do it technically when we go back to the office and take out the lowest person on the voting portion. But we're very happy to have 8 people that want to be this involved.
Absolutely.
Oh, did I say something? I didn't say anything critical, did I? That wasn't.
No, I just.
No, Bob, it's an issue we had earlier in the meeting. It's okay.
Yeah, we just didn't realize it.
It's not a Bob Whittick issue. I give you my word.
No, you guys are terrific. Thank you so much. I just got a text from my client. God blessing me.
How about us?
I need
Best
all the
of
help
luck.
I need all the help I can get. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care, Bob.
Thank you.
Cheers. Good night.
All right, our next case, Omar and Sherry Kohler, block 162, lot 16, 41 Stonehenge Drive, Ocean, in an R3. This is an application to erect a 6-foot vinyl fence on top of an existing retaining wall, ranging in height from approximately 3.5 to 8 feet. The combination height is higher than the maximum permitted. A variance is requested. Or, I'm sorry, required. All right, do we have the applicant with us?
Yes,
Welcome.
thank you.
I need to swear you in. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
And please state your name and address for the record.
Omer Kraler, 41 Stonehenge Drive, Ocean, Jersey.
Okay. Amy, can you mark the packet B1?
Yes.
And I'd like to hear from our professionals first. So Mr. Higgins, you're up.
Okay. Yeah, he wants to put a 6-foot high fence basically on top of retaining walls so that he can enclose the rear of his property, and it's going to meet up with fences and retaining walls that are on other parts of the property. The only concerns I had, and I think Ben also expressed the same concern, is that with the plans as submitted, we can't tell the actual height of the combined wall and fence because the heights of the walls aren't shown. So it's really a matter of pinning down the height as far as impact goes, it's set back far from the street. I don't really have a major problem with the impact. It could be avoided if they reconfigured the fence somewhat, but I don't know if that's practical. And the other thing is he could possibly reduce the fence from 6 feet to 5 feet, which would reduce the visual impact too. And again, I think he just has to briefly discuss why he needs it at 6 feet. But I don't have a problem with the application. I think it's important that they enclose the rear yard so that his kids don't run off and fall over the wall.
Okay, Mr. Higgins, thank you. Mr. Matlack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I only had one comment, and I echo what Mr. Higgins said, that we just need some clarification on the height of the wall and fence combination that would require a variance.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Crowler, would you tell us a little bit why you're here and what you're seeking?
Yes, so the retaining wall, the highest point is about 7.5, and the lowest is about 3. And the house itself is on a hill, so I will be going, the 6 feet will be going on a slope. As I've mentioned in my application, the reason for that is safety of my kids, so they won't fall off the retaining wall. And I'm also looking for the vinyl fence, and the reason for that is I also have a husky, which are known to jump pretty much on anything. Or, I checked that too. 4 or 5 feet, especially if we're going to downhill. So that was the reason behind the 6 feet. And also the vinyl, that's privacy. So my husky is not going to see any animals on the other side and just try to go between the rails like she's done before in other places.
Okay. Does anybody from the board have questions? No one from the board has questions. Does anyone from the public have a question? All right. No one.
I will make one comment to the board. I used to have a husky and I understand fully why he wants a 6-foot-high fence.
I have one question too. Do we know what the existing height of your wall is?
I believe you just said 7 feet at the highest.
7.5.
Okay,
About 7, yeah, just about 7.5-ish.
Okay.
And down to 3.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other comments?
We count the blocks?
Okay, I need a motion to close the public portion of the
Move to
hearing.
close the public hearing.
Well, did we open this to the public?
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody from the public?
We asked questions. We didn't ask for comments.
You need anybody commenting from the public?
Anyone from the public like to comment? If not, I need a motion to please close the public portion.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel, Mr. Manel, Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Hopefully another.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Steinberg.
There's just one variance required here, height of the combined wall and fence. He's got a wall that's 3.5 to 8 feet. He says in his application anyhow, now he says 7.5. And then when you add the 6-foot fence on top, it could be 14 to 9.5, but that's because of the retaining wall. So that's the only variance he needs.
Okay. I need someone to offer.
I'll offer.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Very good. Please just follow up with Amy with a phone call, what you need to close this out.
Thank you.
Our last case of the evening is Jennifer Cunningham, Block 37.02, Lot 4, 8 Allmark Terrace, Ocean, in an R3 zone. This is an application to remove an existing front porch and replace it with a new 36 square foot covered front porch, as well as a new concrete walkway. The applicant would like to keep a 8x6 existing shed within the rear and side yard setbacks. Do we have Ms. Cunningham with us?
We do.
Very good. Welcome to the board. You can please
Well, thank
raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Of course, yes.
Can you please state your name?
Jennifer Cunningham,
And your address, please?
8 Allmark Terrace, Ocean, New Jersey.
All right, thank you. I'd like to hear from our professionals first. Mr. Higgins?
Well, let's mark
Oh,
the.
I'm sorry. B1, Amy, B1.
Okay, and Amy, you did not put the planner's report in. We got Vecchia. Was Jim? You're not in.
That's
this?
right, because Jim is recused himself. So
Right,
we have-
okay, so Christine Bell prepared a report
Got it.
because Jim
Got it.
has, okay, a conflict, but now I'm speaking on her behalf as planning administrator. We just have to clarify one thing, that this is not an R3 zone. This is an R3 cluster zone. Okay, so when we go through the planner's report, the cluster requires 14,000 square feet, okay? And the existing is 17,970. So as opposed to having an undersized lot, they have an oversized lot. So we need to check that. Secondly, the depth is the depth. And number 3 is, it says the front yard setback is 45 feet when it's actually 35 feet in the cluster, okay? And they are seeking a variance which in this cluster zone is 3.65 feet, not 13.5 feet. So that significantly diminishes, the variances in which this applicant is seeking. And all the homes in that area are between 35 and 26 feet for frontage. So the variances that are being sought are significantly lesser than the report would indicate, because we've gone from R3 to R3 cluster.
So she's asking for a front yard setback of
3.65, make it 4 feet. I mean,
no, it's not. That's the opposite, isn't it? Proposed front yard setback is 31 feet, 3.5 inches. So her front yard setback
is 30. It's 35 feet. It's not 45. It's 35. So therefore, she's seeking a variance of 3 feet 9 inches.
Yeah, so she's going to have a 31 foot and change front yard setback.
Correct.
As opposed to 35.
Correct.
Which difference of about a little less than 4 feet. A little less than 4 feet than required, as opposed to 14. Got it. Okay.
Correct. And that significantly impacts the variance which he's seeking.
Got it.
All right, thank you, Ron, for that. Mr. Matlock, do you have anything to comment?
No, nothing substantial. The only thing I noted was that the scale of the survey was off. It shows a 30 scale or 20 scale, and it's actually a 30 scale. That was my only comment. That should just be corrected.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, Ms. Cunningham, in your own words, explain to us what would you like to see and why you're here tonight?
I think that everyone has done a great job of eloquently trying to present it. I think it was in the application as well. I'd like to put a front porch on my house to have a little protection from the elements, if I could, with regards to, and with that, there's concrete that I just want to expand a little bit on the front porch. And as far as that shed goes in the back, that we're seeking, sort of, I guess, sort of grandfathering in. I didn't put up the shed. It just, and I didn't know that it wasn't permitted.
Guys, I'm in the library for 2 days.
Okay, so will the front yard porch, it's going to stay open though, right? It's just covered but open.
Yeah, it's a portico, really. It's just protection from the elements.
But it's an open porch. Okay.
Absolutely.
Which makes it less of an impact for the setback.
Correct.
Okay, and the sheds are required. What do you need them for?
The shed. It's actually just existing on the property. It is for storage of backyard materials.
You know, do we know the distances of the shed? It says frame shed, but I don't see any.
It's easier for you.
Do we have any rear yard or side yard measurements of the shed?
I do not have that.
Can you approximate it? Is
Hang
it
on,
2
Mark,
feet?
I'll measure.
Okay, you're gonna give that to me. And you understand that if the board grants you the shed, in the event it should come down for any reason, either you take it down or it gets destroyed, you can only replace it in a conforming location.
Yes, I understand.
Mark, it looks like we have a 3-foot setback in the rear yard and about a 2.5 foot in the side yard.
Both require 5. Okay, so she's asking for that. Okay. What does it back up to? What's behind the shed or next to the shed?
A fence, the neighbors in the back, a fence.
Is it solid? Is the fence solid?
Yes.
Okay, and on the side too? There's
Yes.
a fence there too? Okay,
Yes.
so it's enclosed?
Correct.
So you really can't see it from the other properties?
No, you really can't. Actually, there's a little trees that cover it too. Between both neighbors' yards.
Where's the rest of your silver? Like, what did he say when you got it?
Okay, anyone from the board have any questions for this applicant? If not,
Wait a
go
minute, the
ahead.
materials that you're gonna use for the porch and the covering and everything, they're gonna match the house, the same roof material, same siding, same look?
Absolutely.
Okay. Got it.
Since there's no board members with questions, is there anyone from the public that would like to have questions with this applicant
Or comments?
or comments? All right, if not, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Amy, please call roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Steinberg,
Yes.
can you give us what we're
Oh,
looking
the
for?
variance, I'm sorry, I'm falling asleep here. Apologize. I think we need a front yard setback of approximately 3.5 feet differential. So it's about 31 and change. And we need for the new covered porch and the expansion of the width. And we need rear yard setback of 3 feet and side yard setback of 2.5 feet for side yard setback for the existing shed to remain. And that with the condition that if it's destroyed or removed, that it has to be relocated only in a conforming location. Everything to match the architecture, design, and colors of the roof and existing dwelling.
I move for a positive resolution.
Thank you. I need a second.
I'll second.
I'll second. Ramey, please call roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Congratulations, Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Please
appreciate
follow
it.
up. You're welcome. Please follow up with Amy for any, details to close this out.
I definitely will.
All right.
Have a great night, everybody. Thank
Okay,
you.
I just think, thank you. Jim and Rod, we have a meeting next Thursday night, a special meeting, right?
And I also believe it starts at Amy at 6 o'clock, isn't it?
Yes.
Starting at 6,
Yeah,
dinner at
that's
7.
Yeah, exactly.
Starts at 6, and I think for the new board members, this was on one time for about an hour, maybe less.
No, twice.
Twice for 40 minutes. Well, once for 45 minutes and once for about 10, where we agreed to have a special meeting.
Okay, those tapes need.
Yeah, we
Amy
got
need-
those. We got
You
those.
got all
We
those?
have.
Yep.
Okay,
we
so
have
just make sure so you guys could all be ready. We can use all 8 or 9 of you next week.
Should be interesting.
Well, and you're going to have public in that meeting, I believe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And Anthony, your idea of interesting is also taking hospitals and ripping them apart while operations are going on. So we're going to have we're going to have a little psychological test going on at the end of this.
Hey, gentlemen, wasn't the very first time we talked about that? It wasn't like a 15-minute discussion about jurisdiction. Did they have to?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
That was on the tape.
Yeah, it's on the tape. The jurisdiction's been resolved. The adjacent neighbor, which is the condo association, basically came up with a deal with the applicant, and they withdrew their objection.
And everyone, if you have any of the flash drives, thumb drives, whatever, please drop them off so we can load them for our next hearing, which is, if you don't mind, drop them off quickly because we need you to have them for next week.
No, they have them. They just said that they all have.
Yeah, we had those already. We listened to them. I listened to them. Yeah.
Okay.
Amy gave them already. She's on top of it. Okay.
Oh yeah, but as long as we want the thumb drives back though. That's it. We got more meetings coming.
We'll get them.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much for
Thank you,
hanging in there tonight, everyone. And
Did somebody make a motion to adjourn?
Oh, yes, we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Manel, Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Good night, all.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.